G'day, it is the coach here, and we are talking all things Disciples of Tzeentch. I am joined by special guest, friend of the channel, someone who's done really well in 3rd edition so far, and I'm going to pick his brains to find out what's the secret sauce and what's the magic that Kaleb Walters is finding in the Disciples of Tzeentch. And I know you did really well. You went 4-1 at Summer Slaughter, which was 100, well, just under 100 players. So yeah, we'll call it a 100-player event. But hello, welcome, and let's talk about Disciples of Tzeentch.
There we go. What would you like to know?
Well, first off, who are you and what got you into the Changer of Ways?
Well, so I'm Kaleb Walters. I live in the United States, mostly on the East Coast. Of course, I've played a lot of tournaments. Been playing since 7th edition, old school fantasy. Been playing since I'm 18. I'm 36 now, married now with 3 kids, jobs, the whole 9 yards. And it's actually a funny story, why I've been playing with Tzeentch so much. I mean, first of all, I love the army. It's being able to, cast so many spells and to throw your opponent off. It's just been amazing. But really what it is when I first started playing, I bought the old school metal Lord of Change. And I'm bringing it from, Maryland to the actual battle bunker in Glen Burnie. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to go to some of the old Games Workshop bunkers. And it's huge, awesome, tons of tables, big tournaments. It was amazing. And I remember I brought my model outside. And it was like one of those Toy Story moments where, yeah, exactly. It was one of those Toy Story moments where I left it on top of my car. I literally left my $50 model, and I didn't make a lot of money back then, so it was just crazy. And I'm driving damn near 3 or 4 miles, and I look at my rearview mirror, and there's the Lord of Change with this metal hooked on the side of my trunk. And I'm turning the corner going from Route 1 to 195. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my model. So I pulled over, grab it. And ever since then, that's just been my main demon army since 7th, and I've been playing it ever since, from 7th to 8th to end times to AOS 1, 2, 3. It's been a journey. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, it's interesting because already the chat's talking about how they want to learn about, avoiding Lumineth and just like some of the magic meta, because probably one of the few people who can go toe-to-toe. I've been playing Zench since, much like you. I have an old collection, as I showed you, my old Lord of Change, and you compare the old Lord of Change to the new Lord of Change, and even the Lord of Change before that, and it's just chalk and cheese how much there's been a glow up. I mean, not nearly as bad as Nagash. You look at old Nagash, and boy, oh boy, that is a glow up. But I've got metal pinks and screamers, and I remember when Brimstones came in, it was just like blew my mind. I'm like, all right, need to go buy more demons. But I've always been a big fan. Like, I always talk to people and they're like, what Chaos God do I love? And I've always fell in line with either the Changer of Ways or Slaanesh. And I don't know, there's just something about Tzeentch, and I love magic. I love the army. It's just a lot of color, a lot of fun. The pink horrors, especially like the old pink horrors, they're pointing their fingers up. They've got, the musician is like literally a drum, and, it's just, and like, I think the champion had like antler ears. Like, it's just a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed the army. And it's been great because they've always been competitive since really, there's always been a competitive build with Tzeentch, whether it is the demon side. It kind of went to mortals for a while. It went back to demons. We went through a time of it was pink horrors, then flame has become really good. You had your acolytes with your shields. So it always seems like you've got a really robust kind of competitive way. And I guess in today's show, we're going to talk much like the other shows. How are you, Kaleb, finding the army in 3rd edition? Has there been any sleeper units that used to be hot garbage, now they're really good? Things that were almost like auto-include in the last book that now you're like, maybe you can work from home for a little bit. And, just we'll go through some of your lists, because the Summer Slaughter list has been changed with an FAQ. And I know you've got an upcoming tournament. I think you've got the Warhammer Open. So we'll do a sneak peek to where your current list is looking like at the moment with Tzeentch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess you can actually start as early as when the Tzeentch book first came out with the 2 big turkeys, the brand new $140 models. I remember I went to Adepticon, and I had 2 turkeys. I had Karos Lord of Change. I had 18 Skyfires. tons of marauders for battle. I had every caster on a man, and I'm like, this is amazing. And I got lucky. I won Adepticon, and I got the pleasure of playing Tom. It was just an amazing time. And then every book ever since then has either nerfed the stuff all the way down to, at this point, I have 3 Skyfires instead of 18. I still have my 2 Lords, but definitely things have changed since then. With the new General's Handbook 3, what I've really noticed, of course, when it first came out, the sticker shock of points, I'm like, holy crap, all my models went up astronomically, way more than I saw other armies go up. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, how am I going to build a list? And what am I going to do? And so I just started reading the book, started reading, everything. I saw cogs. I'm like, well, that's broken. Okay, that's awesome. That's included. Then I started. I don't want to. I saw people winning with Archeon at the time, and I was like, he's amazing, but I don't want to go that route. I love the spell casting. Then I saw I can cast 21 flipping spells a turn. I'm like,
with old cogs, with
with
early
cogs,
right?
Yeah,
not with cogs today.
Not with cogs now, but when Summer Slaughter was here, and that, I guess is what we're going to talk about the list. 21 spells. I'm putting a 10 pink core unit every turn. I'm re-rolling all my casting spelling. So, but back to the point. So, Screamers, holy crap! I would never touch them in AOS 2, AOS 1. Wouldn't even look at them. I actually sold on my Screamers. I was like, you know what? These are just a waste of plastics. Gave them away.
I kept my Screamers because I was using some shenanigans with Change Host, where I'd be able to use the Screamers to fly up and then switch them around, and then I have a big block of Flamers in range.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been times where I remember when Flamers were hot garbage. People weren't talking Flamers. You got the new book, and all of a sudden it was just Exalted Flamer with all the Flamers just burninating the peasants. It was madness.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes with one of the things I wanted to talk about is I feel like Games Workshop is having a hard time with Tzeentch. They don't know where to draw the line on points or rules or the change host and teleporting, and it's just been kind of crazy. But back to the three talk. With everything becoming monsters and certain families of mine, like Host Arcanum, where one of my command traits gives me a free unit of 6, at the start of the hero phase, or in the hero phase, not even at the start. And I can summon them 12 inches up, then move them, then charge, and still use a command ability that makes them -1 rend. I can activate one of my hidden agendas, which we can talk about, which if I make a 9-inch charge where you can't even flee or, redeploy, I can guarantee a 9-inch charge and get +1 to all my attacks. Right, and it's just monstrous against these big giants or any type of monster, making Screamers almost an auto include, and with them also stopping fold the reality with Horrors. Now you can fold the reality on a unit of 9, Screamers, double reinforcing battle line with Host Arcanum. It's becoming a different way of looking at specific units. In addition, with the shorter board edge with AOS 3, some units that I wouldn't really be able to shoot in turn 1, like the Karelek Acolytes. They couldn't shoot turn 1. Well, now they can, right? So now they became, worth that extra 25 points, that actually they cost. And so there's certain things with magic and spells that with the shorter board edge has just made, AOS 3 in terms of my units a little bit more viable. So I mean, in terms of the units, there's just so much. I mean, I can talk, for hours about them.
No, it's good. It's good because like already the chat's even saying, where do Acolytes fall? Because there was this window of time where Acolytes became quite good, and even like Zangor, like you saw some Zangor lists running around for a small period of time. I remember being at a tournament. I think it was a 2,500 point tournament where my opponent had 27 Skyfires. And I'll never forget the day that my Carmine Dragon killed 15 in one single combat. It was the greatest thing since sliced bread, in my opinion. But it was one of the most fun games I've ever had. But you're right, like Zench has always kind of been this really weird one, right? Because it seems like it's taken them 6 years to get pink horrors in a spot where like everyone doesn't feel like they're oppressive. And I don't know how you feel, Caleb, but just from my side of view, I kind of feel like pink horrors are in a good spot. I think they're not too oppressive. They're good in their rules. You still want to take them if you like your pinks, but they haven't been nerfed to like high heaven.
Correct. I mean, if we're going to talk about horrors for a second, I would say going from AOS 1, 2 to 3. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Horrors have been a thorn in not only the negative play experience for everyone, Also tournament organizers not knowing how to rule, certain things about horrors has made it difficult. And even for me, trying to build a list, which I built in Summer Slaughter to have horrors, not knowing fully how they're going to incorporate and work, it's been tough. And I would say now with the new horrors, the negative play experience is over. Right. Yeah. Now, I will say I played a tournament like literally 2 days after they came with the FAQ with the new stuff, and I thought horrors were amazing. I mean, I summoned a unit 10 blues. They had to do 19 wounds, and I still passed my battle shock. Because after you kill the first 10 blues, they didn't slay because they're not actually slain. Only when they started going into the brims did they count as being slain, and I have leadership 10. So I lost 9 of them, plus a little cheating dice that you get with Tzeentch. And I'm like, it's a 1. I pass, and I got 1 guy left. And then I can retreat him, throw him on top of an objective, and you just got to deal with them on turn 3, 4, 5. And you're not dealing with my other stuff. It's
like, do I deal with 1 brimstone? Like, do I put all of my magic or my shooting, or do I have to put them resource into, or do I just ignore it and it ties you up, it pins you, it goes for the objective?
100%. And it's, I think the horrors are, it removes the negative play experience, but at the exact same time, I feel like it's still amazing, like you said. I do feel like it's nothing burger when it comes to their other ability, the vengeance of the mortal wounds, unless they make the points cost with the new, Tzeentch book that might come out a lot less expensive, to where you can like take a double reinforced blue unit, like a 30-man blue unit, make them vengeance, and you can heal them because they're not actually splitting again. And now you have a unit that's going to create mortal wounds back against them at a low points cost, depending on what they cost them, with healing and mortal wounds back. So I could see some play depending on the points of blues and brims, but
there's never been a good incentive where I've gone, right, I'm not going to split again. Like, it always feels like as cool as doing a bunch of mortal wounds would be, they're a great tar pit. They don't do huge amounts of damage. They do chip damage, through spells and through shooting and through combat. But like, I'd rather just tar pit you up with a whole bunch of wounds, really high bravery, and splitting again, as opposed to, my damage dealers are coming from those magic casters and other models in the army. But I think pinks are feeling a lot better, and I think you'll find that if you haven't played with pinks just yet, when you go to a tournament, I think people are like, oh, they're not so bad. So I think it's probably good for everyone, right? The minute you see pinks in the old game, you're like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, no, and I played with the new pinks in the tournament. I got first place again on that tournament too. And I did get a single complaint, a single frustration, a single anything. When they played them, they were like, all right, well, you can't heal them. And I'm like, no, I can't heal them, but I don't take battle shocks, up until you get to my brims. And they were like, that sounds great, and it was very easy, and nobody argued, nobody got frustrated. And I love that. It was unlike, Summer Slaughter, where there was some frustration I saw on different tables that were playing Tzeentch, because the rules were at that point not super clear,
I played against the game, and I don't want to, this is not the pink show, so we'll move off pinks in a second. But I know, from some of my recent 3rd edition experience, you throw in Life Swarm, you throw in Rally, you throw in, I was playing Be'lakor at the time, and Be'lakor then brought up some more models, and it was like,
Fold the Reality. Don't forget.
Fold the reality. It was just like, this is the worst. Like I can't. And because the board is smaller, and this is kind of where I want to transition to, the board's smaller, so it means the pink horrors can really spread out a lot, and it was really hard to kind of avoid because there's less objectives. So moving this to 3rd edition, how have you found these changes? The board size, and you've already talked a little bit about your acolytes being in range, but how have you found the board size, the less objectives? We'll start there, right? How have you found that for your army? Spellcasters more in range, more unbinds?
Correct. So just kind of explain it like that. So the shorter board edge is a good and a bad thing, So it's good that, well, one, if you wanted to buy a table, it's easier to put in your house. We'll start there. It's more accessible in people's homes. Number one. In terms of actually playing the game, it's allowed units like, my brother plays a Piggy Gordrak list, get to you turn 1 very simply, very easy. Even when they eliminated some of the battalions, that free 9-inch move with another 9-inch move, they're on top of you. So it's allowed those Alpha Strike armies to get to you quickly. And in addition to my army, depending on the family I take, like if I take Host Arcanum, one of my command traits or artifacts, whatever, allows D3 flying units to have a pre-game move. So if I'm playing you and I know that I'm going to go first because I'm a 4-drop, I can position my big turkeys up on the board edge because you maybe are playing Battle Regiment and you play some things that are key to you to keep alive. And I can just do a free 6-inch move and cast 21, spells at you, and then all of a sudden you're taking 6 mortal wounds, 9, it's nonstop. But I killed you, then I summon, XYZ in front of you. And with the shorter board edge, with the acolytes, like we mentioned earlier, it could become quite devastating, depending on if you're playing a shooting army, alpha strike army, a magic army. It's a lot more combat quicker. Some of the negative parts you can say, though, is there's less places to move. You can't spread out as much. You can't be as tactical in the sense of, fleeing and trying to move around other people's armies. It became a little bit more difficult there. But at the same time, it's just more combat and faster. So I actually personally think it's a great thing. It means you're in combat quicker. The games can go quicker. It's great. Overall.
I'm finding a lot of armies right now are building in what terminology people might know as Death Stars or a bubble. And in the past, you have scenarios that would have 5, 6, 8 objectives. Now, not only are you fighting for less objectives, but also the value of each objective being 1, 2, or more, compared to some of the other ones where having a lot of objectives used to be worth a lot more. And you are noticing that people are kind of concentrating their forces into 1 or 2 bubbles, or 2 real attacking forces, which really plays to your strength, because you wouldn't often have like a solo hero that YOLOs up the board. You're running up with screens, double screens, trying to protect those wizards. And the fact that you've got a wizard grand strategy, which really works nicely for you, there's less space to kind of, you can really impact whatever you want on the board. There's just a lot of good things for Zench. And I think it's probably why you're continuing to thrive, where some other armies are certainly struggling a little bit in the transition to third.
Yeah, and I mean, it stems back from the way the book was written. If you look the way the book was written, you first have, cheating dice, where I can pretty much do whatever the hell I want. You can hit me with really strong things and I can save myself. Then I have, agendas, which I don't think any other army has, where I can take my basic war scrolls and make them better depending on the situation, almost like a Swiss Army knife. I have all these different families, and they're actually all pretty good in their own way. And so depending on the meta, it might be the, conflagration of -1 rend because there's less rend stacking or save stacking if they get rid of the stacking. Or it might be you can't flee from me. And I'm going to sit a model that's barely touching you on one side, and you have a unit of 30 models, and okay, have 3 models to hit my unit of, 10 pinks. Or you have, of course, the Host Arcanum, where you're playing maybe Archeon. You want that free 6-inch move, that guaranteed 12 or 13-inch move, and then, of course, the guaranteed cheating dice move that you can't change. Tzeentch has such a Swiss Army knife approach to everything. No matter what the game does, unless they change my book, it seems as though I have an answer for it. Just have to change the list.
And, the great thing as well with Tzeentch is you've got access to the coalition units. So even if you do need access to something a bit more combat-y, because that's probably one of your biggest weaknesses, you're just not that good in combat. So if you find yourself in a combat meta, you don't really have the tools. And this is probably why Pink Horrors became really good, because we did get into, at one point, run up the board, smash each other in the face, and whoever's stronger wins. Then you just had to get that tar pit and just like magic out. But you've got the coalition force being able to tap into, was it 2 of every 4 can be slaves, 1 of every 4 can be beasts of chaos.
And that's another thing you mentioned right there that I forgot to say. When at first glance at the book, you're like, okay, what's going to happen? But then you see, like, I can take Beast of Chaos, and they gain this each keyword, and I'm like, holy crap! I now have 2 books, because any model in their book, 1 out of 4 units can be Tzeentch, and if they're going to come out with a brand new Beast of Chaos book, I'm like, here comes a brand new Tzeentch book. What am I going to do? And again,
welcome to Cities of Sigmar. Welcome to Cities of Sigmar. It's like I got a Stormcaster's like, I have a dragon now.
Yeah,
I have.
I love it. I think it's great, and so I'm, and the coalition's right, but that does bring me back to the point where some of the things I don't like, though, about the new book is the coalition. Because I used to be able to take, Marauders. I have little candy cane shield guys, the whole 9, and I have a bunch of them in it. Now they're not battle line. So I lost that battle line option. I lost the Chaos Warrior battle line option. So I lost a lot of battle line options to change the way I want to play the game. And so what I'm noticing in most tournaments, if you talk about just the Tzeentch book, not like Slaves to Darkness book or anything, just Tzeentch, it seems on the competitive scale, it's either mass casting, or Archaeon. You don't see as much of the host conflagration of the -1 Rand. You don't notice some of the other two families who are loading the Lord of Change or, of course, the Zangor builds. You don't notice those. And so I feel like Games Workshop's kind of pigeonholed us super competitive players into two types of list when you're talking about just the Tzeentch book. And unfortunately, they made the casting one a little bit weaker with Cogs, and they made the Archaeon a little bit weaker with removing the, re-roll your 6s to hit. So they've done something, but again, it still kind of pigeonholed us into a specific kind of build structure with less options to call battle line.
Yeah, I'm certainly feeling that in some of my other armies. Like I've been trying to push shit uphill with witch elves compared to the bow snakes. I'm like, I'm gonna not play bow snakes. I haven't been playing bow snakes, and I push it uphill. I'm like, that's it. I'm getting bow snakes because like they're amazing, but also because, and this will kind of lead into third, is that the Rend, I've only got like Rend 1 really at best with witch elves, right? And it's like not consistent. So in this hero hammer meta that we're currently in, and it's and I've talked about this on a few other shows, is that it feels like you're either settling into a heavy shooting meta, or you're falling into a hero hammer meta where people are throwing in Archaeon, Morathi, Alariel, Gotrek, insert hero here. There's just all these, the mega heroes are really dominating because they've got 2 up armor saves or 3 up with, Mystic Shield or all out defense. They just got monstrous rampages, heroic actions. They're just so strong. And because you don't have to spread out your force nearly as much as you used to, in the old days, someone throws out an Archaeon, I'm like, cool, I'll just go kill the rest of your army and I'll score 5 objectives and you hold 1, whoop-de-doo. Now he can sit in the middle of the board and just absolutely, kind of dominate and not really stretch, which is probably why these mega heroes are really kind of taking over right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, the mega heroes are taking over. But when we talk about like the actual game itself on a tournament scale, like the way I look at my list itself, I feel the meta is, there's a lot of shooting in the meta, but I feel like the close combat armies are destroying the shooting. The first turn charge armies are just bulldozing through the shooting armies, which as long as you get a lucky like match 1 or match 2 as me, I'm going to end up playing a close combat army on turn 3, 4, 5, which is what I excel at. And I don't excel on shooting armies. So Tzeentch, if you can duck the first 2 shooting armies, you're doing some good stuff, because you're gonna go really high at that point, because you'll just destroy giants and the Morathi, and Gortrak. Just put a shackles in the middle of him, and he can't do anything, And so you're right, though. It's become these big monsters. I personally think it's great. Because they weren't that effective before. I like the fact that people get to play with their toys. You couldn't play with AOS 2, but now in AOS 3, have at it. This is great. And maybe next year when we go to the next realm, it'll be about something else, and that's exciting. We get to keep building and playing. Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows? Even like how long we're even. And I've said this in a few videos in the past where I've said, who knows how long we're in this pack for? Because when I've looked at the Stormcast book and I've looked at the Auric War Clans book, I'm looking at these grand strategies going, who cares? Because I'm looking at this with General's Handbook 2021.
Yeah.
But what happens if the next battle pack is not GBH 22, but actually the 6-month Christmas release, like we normally get the FAQ? What if it's another drop there? So I think it's probably where you guys really are good at adapting. And maybe just to call out for people who haven't caught this just yet, because of the high armor saves right now, you've got the mortal wounds to be able to handle that and really keep them honest. So for me, again, another reason why you're doing well in the scene is you can do the damage and you've got the strong casting to cut through and make it consistent, while the armies that I play really only get like a +1. I come up against you, I come up against Techless, I come up against some of these other, more heavy magic armies. I'm not getting my spells off, so I'm running out of tools.
No, it's one of those things to where I when I build a list, because I built a multiple Gristlegore, I have a Flesh Eater Quartz army in there, I got an OBR army in there, I got a Orc army, and I want a Adepticon with a Goblet army. It's
I love your humble flexes, by the way. You're like, oh yeah, I just won this event. Oh yeah, I won a Adepticon.
But
whatever.
It's about leaning into something, right? So like with Tzeentch, I lean into casting. With orcs, with the new, I just read the part of the orc book where, after one of the families, I forgot the name of it, they can not only charge if they annihilate the unit, they get to do another charge move.
Oh,
And
the Gorg runners.
Oh my God, I'm reading that, I'm just like, whoa, holy crap. Like that's, and that's going to change the meta, because once that hits the front line and destroys these people who are playing these min-max like I am, I'm playing this, 10-man units of Arcalites, and they're going to blow through them and then hit my casters. Now, again, I'll be able to cast and then retreat, but he's still there. Or you'll talk about the new, what's the new boys? The
cruel boys?
Yeah, the cruel boys, where they could, do multiple things, whether it's saying, hey, Caleb, you can't see this unit. And I'm like, oh, I can't shoot your 9-shot set, and all my magic needs to see you to do damage to you, and you can just move up the table and annihilate me. So it's really going to change, a lot of the way the game's played, and I love that, and hopefully all the books will get some, type of mechanisms to deal with different armies.
I'm really worried about the cruel boys in particular, and I know this is kind of alluding into your army, is that some of these long range monster hunting, the killer bows, they can do a lot of damage, and they can do up to 12 damage per shot.
Love it.
And you then throw into like extend the range of 3. Mm-hmm. We talk at the monster meta right now. They're going to start keeping monsters honest, especially like, terrorgeists, and like there's a lot of things you can possibly. And I think for you, Lords of Change being a monster with not the best armor save, I worry a little bit about what cruel boys could do to you, because they roll a dice. So like when they wound, the damage characteristic is you roll 1 dice for every wound that you have. So if you got 12 wounds, you roll 12 dice. On a 5-up, it's 1 damage plus 2. So like there's a 2 plus 1 for every 5. Correct. So each shot, if it's a 9-person unit, that could kill a bin chicken in 1 shooting phase easily. 2 probably could kill 2.
Yep. And I bought I just spent like $600 on the army. I bought 5 Dominion boxes. They're sitting in my warehouse, and I got a whole bunch of stuff coming for the cruel boys that I'm building. I got 4 of those bolt throwers and 15 of the shooters, because that's what it's all about. Because I believe if you roll a 6, that just does flat 12 mortal wounds, because it goes at the highest.
Bring it down to a 5. I think you bring it to a 5 with venom. I don't know if venom across the weapons is range as well, but you can bring it down in some things.
Yeah, it's the amount of shots you can do, and just with the mortal wounds of the new cruel boys, I'm excited because I'm gonna build it, and it's just gonna add to the arsenal of just trying out different stuff. But it's gonna keep monsters honest 100%, like you said. It's gonna make it to where people rethink what they're gonna build. I would say the most important part of what you should do against people who are playing the new stuff, though, is really think about their ranges. So if you have a range of the big bow and it's 24 inches, and they get a free 3-inch move, 27 inches, well, you better damn well be past that 27-inch line on turn 1. And with me, you can do something where it's like, you do your spell portal, do an instant 6 wounds to one of the shock bows, kill it because it only has 5 wounds, put the Spawn of Chaos next to it, charge the spawn, into the next shock bow, and you at least tied up 2 of their possible 4 that they can have. And then, of course, you can maneuver in such a way to try to maneuver outside while you're summoning stuff on the actual objectives. So when you play against these new armies, it's just about keeping your opponent honest with their ranges and their abilities, and trying to, of course, score as many objectives as possible, but they have so many tools, and I'm looking forward to it.
And you know what, Christopher talked about, having Be'lakor in Zench. This could be a really good use to bring in Be'lakor, especially if if cruel boys really do pick up in the meta, and they start picking off, things like your Lord of Change. Because I think Jonathan asked, do you think we'll see less Lords of Change if you start seeing like the cruel boys with their bows? I think the answer is still no. I think the Lords of Change or Kairos is still vital, whether it's cruel boys or not. But I think the tools, what you said, whether it's going to be getting those chaos spawns, getting the free move, if you can bring something in from reserve, things that can kind of suck up, unleash hell, and get to them early, like the Screamers. You talked earlier about re-looking at Screamers. I think the traditional Lords of Change, pink horror spam might not be the most viable when you start coming up top table against some of these armies that can kind of unlatch that really quickly.
Correct. I mean, it will 100% change the way you play, and But that's what's exciting about all of this. When they come out with the new books, it's about adapting and changing and trying new things and not being afraid of failing. I mean, that's the only way I learn. I lose. I mean, when I first started playing, I played against a buddy of mine. I lost damn near 30 games against him. It was ridiculous. And every time I played him again, it just got a little bit better and better and better. And and that's what's going to happen again. We're going to play with these new armies, and they're going to destroy us. And whether it's the dragons, because they're fleeking off the table, they're awesome too. And I can't wait. I'm looking forward to seeing those bad boys on the table with anti-magic, with the dragons, and of course the new Slaves of Darkness, Tzeentch, anti-magic. And how am I going to adapt to those types of lists, whether I bring in Bellicor, right? Or whatever I do to accommodate these lists. I love it, man. It's enjoyable. I'm looking forward to it.
Talking about your treating dice, your destiny dice, how do you use them? Like, is there any particular? Obviously, it changes in every situation, but are there any particular numbers that you really look forward to, or things that when you have them, you almost like reserve them for these particular situations?
So, like you mentioned, it really depends on who you're playing against, right? So, if I'm playing against somebody who I'm looking at their army and I'm like, holy shit, like, excuse my language, I need to kill these models before they get to play, and I can go first, then I might reserve the 6s for my Skyfires. I'm like, these 3 6s are to kill that 5 wound character, and then my Karos is going to use his 6 flat mortal wounds to kill that character, and I'm going to place that spawn within 3 inches of that unit of 30 witch elves, but I'm going to place it just within 1 inch. I'm going to place it within 3 inches of the model, but only that one model will be able to hit you if it decides to pile into me, to where I tap that entire unit and you can't flee because I'm playing Host Duplicitous. And so now I killed 2 characters, tied up your best unit, and shot at so it just all depends on how you play. But 6s I could save for my Skyfires. I do save some of my, if I'm playing against like Nagash, I might save my 6s to where I've done this before, where Nagash will cast his he'll do this whole spell portal, and I'll let the spell portal go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, fun with spell portal. He'll put it right next to my Lord of Change or Karos, and I'll let it go. And then he'll roll his dice, and he might roll like a 12 or lower. And I'll do, okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my Karos 1 use ability and change your 6 to a 1. Your spell goes off. I'll use my fate dice to roll a 9 for my Lord of Change to dispel it. Now I learned your spell, and now I get to go next and hand it to you.
You get a free portal.
Oh, totally. It's amazing. So I've done stuff like that. I've saved my 1s, of course, for Battle Shock. 2s are a waste. 2s you could just whatever. 2s are the worst. But 5, 6s, anything 9 is good because of your agendas. If you make a 9-inch charge outside of a 9 inch sway, you get +1 to all your attack profiles. So something like the Lord of Change, where he has the Bellwind sword with 2 attacks. Now all of his attacks are 3 attacks. You can do the Arcane Transformation, give it 4 attacks. You can make him his best day ever with +1 to wound. You can give him +1 attack when he goes in, or +1 to hit when he goes in. And now he's a beat stick that can cast 2 with a 5-up Destiny armor save. And now he's killing you from range, shooting. There's just a lot, and it's a combination of everything. So it just really depends on the situation. Sometimes I blew my whole load in the beginning because I want to keep my stuff alive, like against what's the faction, the Dwarf army that can shoot, and they're trying to kill my Lord of Change or Karos turn 1. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm like,
KO.
All your big shots are 2 or 3 damage, or I'm going to save the big shots. Oh, you hit with 4 of them? Okay. All right, all 4 saved. Do your little shots? Okay, I've taken 10 wounds. Okay, I'm still alive. I'll heal D3, and now I'll shoot and kill you. Right, so I've blown my load to save myself in the beginning. I've kept it. It just depends on the situation. You just got to really look at your opponent's army and decide what you need to do, whether you're going to go first or second, and how you're going to play this game.
I feel like, especially if we're going into more of a shooting meta right now, and we already were in a shooting meta. I think it's just we're moving into with more tools where there's going to be a popular Stormcast coming out that could be kind of dropped off with Stormcast for a while. If it doesn't go the dragon route, I think you're definitely going to see things like the other shooters, not your castigators, but things like your long strikes and things just coming down, just popping. And if it's not them, there's going to be a whole bunch of shooting to kind of handle these heroes because they just can't kill the mega heroes in combat. So I always feel like, and I know the list that we're going to show off very soon, you want to go low drops, and the incentive to get extra spells from the spell lore is very tempting. But I feel like going into that unified is going to be critical. Otherwise, you're just going to get shot off the board or hero hammered off the board. That's my interpretation anyway.
Yeah, so it all comes down to, what unit is doing what. So if you have a unit of those, the guys that drop, I forgot the big Terminator armor, I forgot the name of
Like
the Stormcast.
the Annihilators?
Yeah, so I'll spread out my core really far out, perfectly measuring with 1 inch of 2 models as I'm playing to get him as far as I possibly can, making sure all my heroes are outside of range of him doing his abilities. So I just measure. I'm like, you get this. You can go up to 7 inches away from me because you have that character. Your ability allows you to go up to 12, if I'm not mistaken. My characters will be behind that line, right? Turn 1. And if I know I'm a lower drop than you, then I'm going to let you go first. So that way you have to make that decision on what you're going to do, because all of your shooting and magic and dropping is outside of the range of things you want to kill. And that's why I didn't get a chance to say it. That's why I like Karlach Acolytes, because they're enough to do something, but at the same time, they're not as good. So people like almost ignore them because it's like that fine line between being shitty and good, And you think about it like, I really need to kill his 1,300 points of characters, but in order for me to do that, I got to kill this crap. Well, if I don't go next, I'm screwed. What do I do? And it makes your opponent really think about what they need to do. And depending on who you're playing, you stay outside of range. It's pre-measuring season. It's not like it was back in 7th edition. You can just pre-measure everything. Just be like, oh, you guys could do 14 inches. I'm 15 inches away.
I'll be honest though, I wouldn't mind going back to the days where there was no pre-measuring. I was a gun. I actually played a little bit of 6th edition last year, and I'm like measuring out my guns, and I'm like, I'm going to guess, and I was like pinpoint nailing my guesses because back in the day, folks, you actually, when you declared a charge, and that happened before the movement, you would declare at a particular unit. So if you failed the charge at that certain unit, you couldn't reroute and go somewhere else. So it made the charge phase very interesting. And you had to be very selective and, pray to the gods.
Yeah, I remember it's similar because just like you're saying, back then we used to have to guess. You're like, you look at the table, you're like, my model's right here on the table. I'm like, that looks like it's about 33.5 inches. And you're just like 33.5, and you put it out there, you're like 33 and 3/4, and then you roll that one dice, the scatter dice, where if you roll a 1 or a 6, dead nuts. If you roll anything else, it's going that way or this way or this way. It was so much fun, but it was all guess range. And then they wanted to simplify everything, and now that's here we are. Pre-measure.
How do you find the new command abilities? We talked a little bit about rally. You've got things like redeploy, and redeploy is definitely now one of my favorite command abilities. And I always want to have a CP up my sleeve, especially early on, to do a redeploy. The amount of times that I've denied an opponent a battle tactic, got myself out of combat, even redeploy onto an objective to score it when I wasn't scoring, or at least contesting, really valuable. Obviously got all out attack, all out defense. You've got Unleash Hell. Where are you finding value in your command? Because from memory, you don't have a lot of amazing command abilities. Like, there's some good stuff, but it's not like you've got like these must-drop command abilities on your scrolls.
Yeah, I mean, the only one that I like to do is the Lord of Change, adding +1 to my demon casters. I like doing that because it's adding on to the actual casting result that I'm going for, and that's always a good thing when you have so many spells. When we talk about the generic command abilities, first and foremost, I love the game because it's more interactive. If we're playing each other, I no longer say, hey, I'm going to go get some Starbucks. I'll be back. Let me know what happened. No, I'm watching you play. I'm watching you move. I'm making decisions in the game. Redeploy is also my absolute favorite. I love it, and what I notice when we talk about redeploy, sometimes I want to go backwards, like you say, and sometimes I want to go forward. I want to get closer to you. Because when people charge, now they have the ability of moving around your unit to hit something else. And so I'll bring my unit closer to you, making the gap between me and you so much more, to where even with your 1 inch or 2 inch range weapons, you can't hit what you really want to hit. And you have to hit my nothing burger acolytes, and I'm okay with it, So in terms of redeploy, I love it. In terms of, healing, for my army specifically, because I can't do it with horrors, I don't do it that often because my acolytes are kind of I don't do it that much to them. And Skyfires, I only have 3, so I'm not going to roll 1 or 2 dice and hope for a 6. I will say the pluses to hit, amazing. I really like that. I sometimes will do the stand and shoot occasionally, depending on what's charging me. But I like the variety, and it's not just for my army. I like the variety for everyone's army, because everyone has something that can utilize these basic command abilities, and I think it's wonderful what Games Workshop did. In fact, I would actually like them to expand it even more so, just to allow more of a Swiss Army knife for armies to play with. Nothing crazy, maybe this unit can reroll once. I know that might be a little crazy to some, but it's just adding something additional. It would be nice.
Yeah, give me. There's a few extra things I'd love, but I'm finding it quite good. There'd be times where I used to be able to go to the bathroom and go, look, just move your stuff. I trust you enough that if you want to move and cheat, cool. That's on your character.
Yeah.
Like whatever. But now, I'm super engaged. I want to make sure that in the movement phase, if there is a redeploy, if there's an unleash hell I want to throw down, if there is going to be there's so many things I could possibly do, and even just the interactivity. And I don't think this is going to affect you very much, but even things like priests now being able to unbind spells, because you've just got such strong magic, so it doesn't really worry. But I guess if people are going to cast more spells, then it works in your favor.
Yeah, I personally love it when people cast spells, not just for, of course I love it because I get the free, I'll call it free shit with my free casting. I just get free stuff.
And you're cheating dice.
I got cheating dice and free shit. Let's call it what it is. And I got agendas that nobody else has. This is a great army. I like it when people cast, but I also, I love spells. I love the way spells interact in the game. Personally, I know some people don't like it. I love it because it spells, if you have a lot of different spells, it's a Swiss Army knife. Depending on the situation, you can change somebody's complete game plan. Priests are amazing. I'm glad they're making them stronger again. With all the different abilities that priests can do, with some of the new books that are coming out, and especially Stormcastle, seeing some of them, amazing. And I like it a lot. And so I'm looking forward just to added additional spellcasting and added additional prayers and just the overall abilities and just more flex around the entire game system. I couldn't be happier, personally.
I can tell you're having a lot of fun. And I certainly, I'm having a lot of fun too, despite I've actually haven't played real life 3rd edition.
Gotcha.
But I can't wait to play real life. Spells, you're talking a lot of spells, right? You're talking heaps of spells, and obviously it's one of your big strengths. Have you found spellcasting change much at all in 3rd? I think one big change for me is obviously the mysterious terrain table has just gone back to 1. So it means there's more likelihood that there's going to be arcane terrain. Now, obviously that works positive, and also it kind of works against us that our opponents are going to go for it, or it might be that +1 that gets them over the line. Have you found spellcasting change much? The fact that 1, obviously the board size has shrunk. 2, you've got more arcane terrain. 3, just stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of spells themselves, I will say that what cost me, a lot of that last tournament I played at Summer Slaughter, I went for the extra casting. Terrain, give me +2, and I really shouldn't have, because I really didn't need to. And even my opponent at the end, we were talking, and he said it, and I was already thinking it, and I'm like, yeah, because if I had my stuff more in the center of the table, my spells would be, more outreaching versus on the side, and now my spells are reaching a lot less. And so that was a huge blunder on my side, where I really didn't need the spells. It wasn't like I was playing against a, the Croak or Nagash. I didn't really need the +2. The +1 was perfectly fine, and a game could have definitely been a little different from there. So I will say that knowing that certain armies need it and certain armies don't, and not trying to maneuver your pieces in a certain way that's going to cost you more than you really want to pay, just to get that extra bonus, that's something we definitely need to think about when we're playing, especially if it takes you away from objectives or, battle tactics, everything. In terms of spells themselves, for my army, I don't know if you want to, speak on, what I can do.
I'm going to bring up your list very, very. I'm just setting this all up. We're setting the scene.
Perfectly
We're
fine.
kind of getting into the ideas, and I got 1 or 2 more burning questions, and I'm going to bring up your list. And we were going to show off Caleb's Summer Slaughter list. However, that has been FAQ'd. Obviously, there's been some updates. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to show you where the tournament you're going up to pretty soon, which will be the Warhammer Open New Orleans. So we'll give you a bit of a sneak peek of what he's thinking about for his next tournament. So that's how we'll kind of bring the show home. But because the other part with spellcasting that I wanted to touch on with you, just because obviously you're such a spell-heavy army, is endless spells changed, and specifically the way you move predatory spells. Does that create an incentive for you to put in more predatory spells, or even things that can be moving in both the turns compared to what you used to have? Because obviously the points went up, so it's harder to get more of those endless spells in.
Yeah, so I mean, I will say that right now I've been, my next list that I plan on really touching on with Tzeentch is going to be more heavily focused on endless spells. Instead of what I have now, where it's like before it was like the portal, like everyone took, the life swarm, like everyone took, and cogs, like everyone took. They took the 3 depending on the army. I really feel like some of the damage abilities have a lot of gas. Even the Tzeentch one where it's rolling 9 dice on 4s against wizard doing mortal wounds. I mean, that's 4 to 5 wounds my turn, and then your turn. You're dead. Next spellcaster. And then I could take something like, I know it's a little bit expensive right now, but the Life in Dark Geminids. And, yeah. I mean, I understand some people don't like it, but 2+ can't use command abilities. It could be pretty game changing for that period of time. Or just, there's endless spells that's half your movement, and it's such a far range where it's going up 24 inches, draw a line, you're half movement, and and you're stuck. And then I'm gonna put shackles in front of that, and so there's so much play depending on whether it's a combat one or stopping you from moving one. I do feel as though endless spells are really good, and a lot of people, including myself, haven't really digged in enough to really utilize them at the level I think they're worth.
I guess the challenge for you is that because you've got coalition units, probably one of the big changes from 2 to 3 was that you can't bring in Darkfire Demon Wraith. You couldn't bring in the Bullfire Taurus. And even though you can do coalition, a Great Bray Shaman, you could get in yourself a what's it called? What's the little wizards? The whatever.
Which one?
Gaunt Summoner. The Gaunt Summoner.
Okay.
Like you used to be able to bring in the Gaunt Summoner that would then you get access to the Darkfire Demon Wraith. That's now no longer an option, and it does limit you a little bit. But the War Scrolls have changed, and there's a couple of good ones in there.
Yeah, no, back when it was AOS 2, my list was very similar, except I didn't have the Lord. I had Karos, but I had the Manticore. I had the Khorne Demon Prince to stop people from charging. I had the Darkfire Demon Rift. I had the Skyfires at a unit 6 instead of 3. It was very similar to what I had, and I was winning, a bunch of that too. And just the Darkfire Demon Rift, I'm like, okay, that unit 10 damage, that unit 10 damage. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then I'm like, okay, into my hero phase, Karos is going to dispel that bad boy because I don't know who's going to go next, and I don't want to die, And so it did hurt losing the coalition units. It did hurt losing coalition battle line is what it hurt, and also the coalition endless spells that hurt. But the Manticore, I love that model, and that's a model that even with coalition I do tinker back and forth. And if the meta changes to where it's more about mass units, if that's what we go to, Chaos Sorcerer is going back on my list because that 5-up, mortal wounds, 6-up D3 mortal wounds just nukes the unit in half every single time, and it's just amazing how strong it is. Yeah.
A couple of rapid fires before the list. 1, Mega Gargants. You've got. I know the answer to this. I know the answer, but I need to do it in case there's somebody looking to put it in their cart. Is the War Stomper considered in your list, or is there value in a War Stomper in Zench?
I think there's value in everything, but I don't see it in my competitive list. So, it depends who you're playing. Like, if we're playing competitive, no.
We're talking competitive here, folks. So, if you want to run a narrative, and you make a big, pink horror of Mega Gargant and you mess it up, like obviously do you. You're having fun, do whatever. We're talking competitive here. We're talking tournament play. Mega Gargant, probably not a great choice in Zench.
No.
And the big bad Archaon, where do you land kind of on him? Is he something that is good, something
Yeah,
that is auto include, or depends on like what your style is?
I think he is amazing. I have him. I just haven't built him. I have to add lights and everything to all my stuff, but
Of course you
he's
do.
he's he's amazing. He's strong. He's versatile. But again, it's all about your flavor. You know, he can destroy games. He can destroy so much. He's even with losing his sixes to reroll, he's still with the save stacking and the guaranteed charges with Tzeentch and the 6-inch free move and knowing that I can kill that model no matter what you do. And it's game changing when you know what you can do. And in Warhammer, most armies don't know what they can do. They have to roll dice. You actually have to roll. You're like, I need to roll a 3+ to win, and you don't roll it. With Tzeentch, it's just, no, I got this. I have the fate dice. I have the cheating dice. It's going to happen. And there's nothing, I don't got to worry about it, so it's a very different gameplay when you're playing Tzeentch versus another army. But yeah, he's an auto include if it's your flavor, 100%. But you don't need to take him because there's so many other strong things within Tzeentch. But he's amazing. Absolutely.
I was just thinking a great way to use the cheating dice, as you're now calling them, is you're starting to see in Chaos armies, especially having the Khorne Demon Prince with its aura of halving your moves and your charges. It's such a generous 18-inch bubble. And then what happens is they throw down a redeploy and it basically becomes near impossible, unless the kind of stars align. And I can see using your fate dice to be able to guarantee a charge is at least one of those counters, because to get around it with actually, the luck of a dice roll can be near impossible. Just thought about that. Good use of the dice. Whether you want to, different story.
100%. And also you got to think about the agendas, right? And that's where a lot of people don't fully, because they don't play Tzeentch, they don't understand. And even though you explain it to somebody at the game starts, they're not thinking about, okay, he has cheating dice, he's going to summon, he has agendas, and then all of a sudden you can do like Host Arcanum to give him an extra attack on his best profile. If you're playing against something like a bigger horde unit or like maybe the dragons and you need to do more damage, right? You might want to do the Reckless Abandonment agenda where you make that 9-inch guaranteed charge so they can't redeploy. They can't do nothing but take it. They can't, shoot at you. It's guaranteed. And then you get +1 to all your attack profiles. So now you got +2 on the top one, +1 on everything else. Or if you're facing against something with higher rend and you can kill a monster on turn 1, then maybe you want to kill I think it's like a 12 or 9 wound monster and you get +1 to your save guaranteed. So now he instantly goes to a 2-up save just because you killed a monster on turn 1. And then your save stacking goes to now a 1-up or a 0, and now it depends on who you're facing, what you're doing. Those hidden agendas, can definitely enhance everything that is not priced in the book for Archaon.
Well, let's double down on this because it's probably one of the few armies that has anything like this, because you're juggling agendas, you're juggling battle tactics, you're juggling obviously command points, you're juggling on command abilities, you're juggling a grand strategy. How do you find managing, like, just at a basic level, having to achieve an agenda and to achieve a battle tactic at the same time? Because I imagine that is another layer of complexity that people wouldn't have had in the past.
In order just to keep track in your brain, you need to have some type of way of remembering it, whether it's the AOS reminders or it's something that you make homemade. That will help you out. Now, in regards to how do you juggle what you need to do, that just comes down to knowing what your opponent has. If I know that if I take that objective from you and now my models count as 2 wounds or double wounds, because it took it like that. I remember the horrors. There's a hidden agenda where if you take an ability, your horrors count as 2 wounds instead of 1. And so if I just happen to summon a unit of horrors and you don't put your model correctly on the pie plate of 6 inches, around, and you have your stuff on the edge, and I summon a unit of 10 guys, and the next turn comes along, and I'm like, okay, if these guys take this objective from you, then they're going to count as 2 wounds instead of 1, and that's one of my agendas. And so now I got 20 pink cores, and then when they multiply, I'm like, oh, you killed Tink, I got 20 blues, now it's 40 models, and so it becomes kind of cool like that. So that's one agenda. The other one is the Reckless Abandonment, where if you're outside of 9 inches away from all enemy models and you make a 9-inch charge, you get +1 to all your attack profiles. really awesome. Another one is, like I mentioned with Archeon, if you kill a monster that has a certain amount of wounds, then you get +1 to your save for the rest of the game. And another one is if you kill a unit, you get +1 to hit. And then one that I put on my change caster, which we could talk about in my list, if you make a 9 spell twice, you get +1 to your casting. And so now you get a +1 to casting from that agenda, plus your Lord of Change is +1 to casting, and it just makes it +2 to casting. And as long as you roll a 9+, you keep casting like a machine gun. And so I'll go over that in here.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah,
well.
And we have brought up the list. So this is not the Summer Slaughter. This went 4-1. This is the new and improved FAQ'd one coming up for the Warhammer Open. So as Caleb's referred to many times now, the host Arcanum is the Coven. You've gone with Prize Sorcery, probably to the surprise of nobody. And then you've obviously gone Bloodthirsty as well. They literally, like, why on earth would you not choose Prize Sorcery? Like, for your army, it's
unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's like an auto include if you're playing in a tournament. If I'm playing friendly play, I'm playing something a little bit harder to gain, but this is a no-brainer. Everything's a freaking caster except for my Skyfires, and so you got to kill my entire army for me not to get my grand strategy. And if that happens, I already lost the game. So
yeah,
it's a free
exactly
3 points. So it's a free 3.
And I think that's probably another thing as well. What I was going to allude to around the juggling of the agendas and the battle tactics is to try to find those ones that synergize really well with what you're already trying to achieve. So if there is synergy with your battle tactics and something that you want to do, whether it's pull down a monster, whether it is, get into the backfield and have two units in their deployment zone, whatever it might be, try to find synergies as opposed to trying to find, I'm trying to achieve something and then something completely different as and I'm kind of being stretched and, you make those mistakes and that's where your opponent's going to capitalize. But the list you've already mentioned, I've already mentioned, you've got the Lord of Change with the Amulet of Destiny, and then with the Bolts of Tzeentch, you've got your Kairos Fate Weaver. I want to talk a bit more about Kairos because Kairos has had a recent. You didn't see him that much in 2E. Like, he had his time. He then kind of dropped off a little bit. And everyone kind of got a second bin chicken if they wanted a second caster. But I want to know, like, why Kairos is kind of coming back. You got the Blue Scribe. You've got the Herald of Zench. Scribe has Fold Reality. The Change Caster has Arcane Transformation. The Ogroid Thermatage. I know one of my crew, Ash McEwen, was absolutely obsessed with the Ogroid Thermatage in his Zench army. So you've got that as a general, funnily enough, as Spell Hunter, Fanged Circlet, and Arcane Suggestion. Big fans already. People are loving the fact that you've got the Ogroid Thermatage in there. Got 3 units of Acolytes and not a pink horror in sight. So I'm sure there'll be some sites that you'll talk about. Your Zangor Skyfires, of Beasts of Chaos, interesting. And then it was, is that new? Have they always had that? They've never
so
had that
here's
title before.
Here's the dilemma that they need to fix right now, and I'll talk about it right now. So 1 out of 4 of your units can be Beast of Chaos. So I'm taking the Beast of Chaos from Skyfires because they're cheaper than the Tzeentch.
Oh. So if I was to buy the Zangor Skyfires in a Tzeentch book, they're a little bit more expensive than the Beast of.
Yeah, they're 210, so it's 15 points cheaper.
Same war scroll?
Same exact war scroll. Because
other than like this, like.
Yeah, 1 out of 4 of your units can be Beast of Chaos, and what happens is they just gain the Tzeentch keyword. And so now they're in my list. They're 1 out of 4. And so until they come out and say you have to take it from your Tzeentch faction with the more expensive points, hey, they're less expensive on Beast of Chaos, so have at it.
The only difference would be they wouldn't have the Disciples of Tzeentch keyword on there, but that's not important. You want the Tzeentch keyword. You don't need Disciples of Tzeentch.
Nope, just 1 Tzeentch.
Some good science there. I was wondering what you were doing there. I'm like, wait a second, they haven't been rebranded.
Nope,
as Alexander said, that sounds sus. That's sus. I like it.
It's definitely sus on GW's part, or I guess sus on me for being a little cheeky with it. But hey, it's in the game. Tiger Woods plays with his whole arsenal. He doesn't just play with a putter.
I love it, and the fact as well, like with the coalition as well, what you lose is that they just can't be battle line. They just can't be battle line, and they can't be your general. So if you were to bring in something from like Slaves to Darkness, I don't know, your Sorcerer Lord on Manticore, cool. It just can't be a general. If you bring in a battle line Chaos Warriors, they can't be battle line. They can be in a core battalion. They just can't be a battle line. So interesting. You've also got your Umble Spell Portal and your Soul Snare Shackles, and then you've got your 2 core battalions being the Command Entourage Magnificent, and then the Battle Regiment. And you've taken an extra artifact coming in as a 4-drop. Nathan Brooks, I don't know if I have to have a look at this particular comment on where it's referred to. Nathan reckons that you might have to take the most expensive points. I'll need to see the source material for that.
Yeah, I would love to see that, because if that's the case, I'll have to change a little bit, and I definitely will. But I haven't seen that yet, and I would love if you can put that in the notes so I can see it where that's at. That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, let's assume we haven't seen the notes. I don't recall it, but that's not to say that it's not somewhere buried in like the million erratas.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's like every time there's some new errata, and then now you have the designer notes on the side, and you're like, okay, hold on, let me see these and those, and it's becoming fun.
I'm going to hire a Sherpa just to carry around the books and have like a scribe to to work all the things out for me. But talk to me about talk about whether it's your hero choices, like from having the Lord of Change and Kairos. That's a lot of points going into the 2, and then obviously the supporting heroes. But and then Coach is saying, Coach Polito was saying that it's in a community article before launch, so we'll need to.
Okay.
That might just be a comment, but hey, let's just continue for now. Yeah,
no worries. And definitely, if you can find that article, I would just put it in the notes so I can read it too. But the reason I take the Lord of Change and Karos, first of all, I love the models. That's I love Tzeentch, so that's one of the main reasons. I wanted to keep it all as much casting as possible. The reason I take 2 is really because of my family. And I mentioned this earlier that, because D3 of my units that can fly can get a free 6-inch move. As long as I roll a 3 or higher, I'm bringing both Lord of Change and Karos up together, especially if they can turn 1. So that way they can do all of their spells and just be devastating as much as possible before, I have to decide that, what I'm going to do for the game. So if we talk about the Lord of Change, the reason I take him, number one, his spell, Inferno, I think it's called Infernal Gateway, where you roll 9 dice, and for every 3+, it's a mortal wound. So on average, you're getting 6. You could get a little unlucky and get 5 or 4, or you can get extra lucky and get all 9. I've seen it all within the realm, and so that many mortal wounds, on average 6, it's quite impactful when you talk about killing characters or really dampening somebody's strategy. And then from there, if I happen to move the 6 inches forward, Bolt of Tzeentch, he's a level 2 caster, another D6 mortal wounds. So it's not much you can really say about it, except for, he has the 5+ after save. So he has 14 wounds with a 5+ after save. He has a 4+ natural save with bravery 10, so he can heal D3. Another reason that people don't really know too much about him is he has a Spell Eater ability. It's not Spell Eater, it dispels an endless spell within 18 inches. He has an ability where if he dispels a enemy spell on a 9+, he gets to know that spell for the rest of the game. And so many times where people have cast spells, I'm like, okay, can you read that spell to me? Oh, it doesn't say undead models. It just says, minuses to hit, or like the Croak's ability where it's like unlimited range and pick D3 units and just do D3 mortal wounds. It just becomes, like, okay, that's 9+. I stop that spell. I know for the whole game. That's an amazing. And with both Karos and Lord of Change, they have the ability where you match the lowest dice to the highest dice. So if you roll 6 and a 1, it's really a 12, and so it's amazing with the Blue Scribe, having the ability of re-rolling all your casting. It's almost an auto clue where you're really unlikely you're going to roll double 1s twice. So you should roll decent. And so that's why I take the Lord of Change. He's a phenomenal model. He does a lot of damage. He's hard to kill with the 5+ board save. He has the close combat sword weapon, so he can actually do some damage in combat. And so I really like him a lot, and I feel like he's pointed pretty well for everything he does, and he's a monster. And that kind of goes with the battle traits. The first battle trait that I normally do is the 3 monsters run. And that will be basically the Lord of Change, Karos, and the Change Caster. And the Change Caster, he has a one-use ability where he can roll 3 dice and pick the 2 highest. And so he's more likely to roll a 9, rolling 3 dice with +1 to casting, and dropping the lowest and re-rolling it. So, and that will turn him into a monster. Run them all within 3 inches of each other because you don't really need to go anywhere on turn 1, and you get 2 extra points because 3 monsters did it together, right? And then you have
which is the metamorphosis spell, but for anyone who hasn't seen it, because there's a couple of things that I notice people aren't using very often. Metamorphosis is definitely one. Another one is when you kill a monster, you get a victory point. So there's a couple of little things in the GURP battle pack you should keep in mind. But Metamorphosis, having 2 guarantees through the Lord of Change, and then Kairos, and then, because you don't need 3 monsters. I think I've kind of come into that conclusion. But having 2 and then being able to cast 1 reliably, lets you get that battle tactic, that one battle tactic where you need 3, and then everyone else needs 2 or less.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Karos, I mean, I'll touch on him. You mentioned him. I've never not played him. I played him since 8th edition. I played AOS 1, AOS 2, AOS 3. He's almost a auto-include in every single one of my list. And I've never really not taken him in my Tzeentch list. But just to talk on why I take him every time, he has the same profile. So he has, 14 wounds, a 4-up save, bravery 10 for the healing of D3. Right. He has 2 decent close combat attacks, that are actually decent, not great, but they can definitely do upwards of like 8, 9, 10 wounds, especially if you have +1 to hit. In terms of his spell is the real reason why you take him. Of course, he's matching the lowest to the highest when he casts a spell. So roll 2d6, lowest to highest, it's going to go off. And what it is as long as he hasn't taken any damage, it's just a flat 6 mortal wounds. And, and the thing that people don't really think too much about is the way you place the spawn, where you have to pick the model. The first model your opponent picks is where the spawn gets placed within 3 inches. And I notice a lot of people will take it from the corner of their unit. And what will happen, especially in a different family, host duplicitous, which I take more often than this family, where you can't flee, you can place that spawn within 3 inches of that unit. And now only 1 model in that entire unit can swing back against you. And you just tied up a whole unit, especially if it's like their front line, and you're just like, yeah, I'll place it right there, and your whole army's stuck, especially if you can't fly. And while my army just moves up, and that makes it very difficult to kill 5 wounds with 1 model. I like that a lot. Or
stops unleash. It stops unleash hell. It means they can't shoot at the juicy targets.
Correct. Yeah, and that's where I was going to go with the Skyfires. Is you cast the Karos to kill, like, let's say the Lumineth. My first opponent, Summer Slaughter, he had 3 of those crazy can't target me flying 24 inches with a 12-inch move. I forgot the name of those guys, the super fast, crazy shooting guys. And then they also had 30 of those bows. And I just casted...
the foxes. You're talking Severith and the foxes.
Severith and 2 foxes and 30 bows. And I was like, I'm lower drop than you, so I'm going to go first. I did the free 6-inch move, and I casted a Karos on his archers, killed 6 of them, and put my spawn right there. And I just tied him up because he would have to shoot him on his first turn and not shoot the things that I want to keep alive. So it's a huge deal to do that. Another reason you take him, besides the spawn and the spell, of course, unchecked mutation is D3 mortal wounds, and if you kill a model, you roll a 3+ and do another further D3. But the main reason why you take him is his ability of screwing up your opponent's game plan. He has a 1-use ability that he can use in the game that basically allows you to change the dice roll of yours or your opponent's. Now, there's 9 different things you can do, like hitting, wounding, charging, casting, dispelling, the damage characteristic. There's 9 things, but it's once per game. The thing that makes it so valuable is, again, with these close combat, when you're facing against Gordrak or Archeon or whatever, they charge you, and they're 7 or 8 inches away, and they roll a 12. And you're like, okay, well, you have +2 to your charge. I'm going to take your 6 to a 1. So it's only a 6-inch charge, right? You're outside of 7, and it cannot be re-rolled or modified. So even if you had pluses to cast, doesn't matter. It can't be re-rolled, doesn't matter. So you do have to ask your opponent.
Re-roll. You cannot re-roll a re-roll. So because it's re-rolled, nothing you can do.
It's not re-rolled. It's replaced. But the wording of the actual ability says you cannot re-roll it. Yes. So even if you had the ability, so it really stops your opponent when it comes to charges. It stops your opponent, especially if they need to charge and get on an objective. Then you just stop them from getting their battle tactic. If you know they need to kill a character and to get their battle tactic, you stop that. So that way they're always playing behind you. Or if you're playing against an Nagash and you want to take their first move and make it a Snake Eyes, if he rolls like a 1 and any other number, you're like, all right, that other number's a 1. You miscast. You're done casting this turn. There's just so much variety that Karos can do no matter what AOS version it is, if they keep that same ability to completely destroy your opponent's ability of capturing objectives, points, whatever it might be, it's very, very strong. And so that's why he's like almost an auto include in every one of my list. I like him a lot.
I think what like when you looked at the old change host route, majority of people would just center it around like one Lord of Change, a couple of support heroes, and then all of the demons as much as possible. But one of the things that you're noticing, I couldn't agree with you more with Kairos, is whether it's Kairos and Archaon, they combine really nicely, especially if you want to change one like Slayer of Kings and just auto delete something. Things like you got to remember, like you mentioned the Maw boss, the mega boss on Maw Crusher, right? As an example, some super buffed up hero, they might have used their finest hour as their heroic action. They've cast all these spells to supercharge this hero. They might have used the hero command ability to supercharge them. They have gone full aggressive, knowing that they are going to claim a battle tactic, which could be kill. And you've set this whole sequence up, and then with one ability, this once per game ability, and this is where Be'lakor used to be really good as well. With Dark Master, you just kind of like switch it off, and then boom, this whole plan has gone down. You've lost your battle tactic. You have, potentially delayed combat by at least, and then you go back at them. There's so many tools that you could use. I think that's where Kairos really does play nicely in the meta right now, especially when you're trying to deny battle tactics, because that's just important. It's not about objectives. It's equally about battle tactics, scoring yourself and denying your opponent, which is why I love redeploy.
And that you bring up the best point, because I've done that before, where you just let your opponent cast a bunch because it's giving somebody a bonus, and you're just like, oh, free points. I'll get a free casting point because you casted 2 spells. Thank you. And you know what you're going to do. And with redeploy, if you know you're going to do that and he's 3 inches away from you, you're like, all right, redeploy. And let's say you roll a 2 and now you're only 5 inches away. Well, if your opponent rolls a 1, 2, or 3 with 2 of those dice, on just one of those dice, instantly they're not going to make the charge, because you can just take their can't be modified or rerolled. So it's really impactful with Kairos and redeploy and all these different abilities. And you take them. It's amazing. The hardest part is knowing when to use it and how early or how late. You don't use it too late, then it's a waste. And if you use it too early, then who knows who's going back to back, and that's definitely a concern. Then we go to the blue scribes. So naturally, people think just because he has reroll casting is why you take him, and you wouldn't be wrong in the sense of this family of Host Arcanum, because they don't have reroll casting. However, Host Duplicitous, they do. But I will still find myself taking a blue scribe or something like the blue scribes, like the Magister on disc, because the reason you do that is because he flies 16 inches, right? And when you're talking about, as you're maneuvering Tzeentch, you're not going to go forward towards your opponent because you're going to die. You're going to start to do something where you're going to start killing a side of the table over here. And at the same time, after you kill that table, your whole army is going to start drifting that way while you're holding one more objective than your opponent, sacrificing that one unit that's closer to your opponent's army. And the reason why it's so important is while your army's on the one side of the entire table, you're going to need to get to the other side because there's stuff over there you need to hold. And so with Blue Scribe, he's 16 inches. With the cheating dice, you can make it a 6-inch run. So now he's at 22. You summon a unit wholly within 12 inches of him. So now, you're 20, you're 30, 4 inches of summoning a whole unit from spellcasting on turn 3 to claim that objective that is held by one character because your opponent thought there's no damn way. And so having that 16-inch move is incredible. And his spell, again, is reroll casting, goes off in a 4. And so if you're playing against an opponent that can't dispel past 30 inches, you just keep that model, over 30 inches behind him so they can't stop you from getting it off. Maybe that's a good use of your 2s if you have the cheating dice. You're like, okay, 2 2s. These are waste. The spell goes off because you're out of range of 30 inches and you can't dispel unless you're playing against Croak or something like that. And, it's a great way. And his bubble is 18 inches of casting, so it's very big and can capture most of your Acolytes or your Kairos, your Lord of Change, or your Blue Scribes. You just have to do a little bit of pre-measuring to make sure if you do that 6-inch free move, you're not taking yourself out of the bubble of joy with the Blue Scribes. And the spell is Folded Reality. The only reason I put the Folded Reality in this list is for the free unit of 6 Screamers that you get on turn one, because you're going to go a little balls to the wall sometimes in the beginning, where you're going to fly them up, maybe fly over and do some damage, and your opponent's going to get a turn to go after you, and they're going to choose to either do two things: go after your screamers, or they're going to have to go after your things that are actually killing them. Right, and most people go after things that are killing them, but they'll also put something against the screamers, bringing them down to 3 wounds, 2 wounds, or even 1 wound. You fly that model back, you heal them back up to full with Fold of Reality, and because it's such a niche spell, Blue Scribe only has 1 spell, so you only use it in such a very rare situation. Back to Karos. I'm sorry. He knows.
That's right. Keep going.
He knows all the spells of the Tzeentch wizards, but only knows their main spell. Doesn't know their secondary spells. So the Karos will know.
And he won't know if you steal a spell. You're not going to. Kairos.
No, I would not.
Know that
Karos would not know
no.
that, right? And that's why I have it built this way. But Karos knows the Blue Scribes reroll casting. So in that case where I need to use Fold of Reality, Karos might cast the reroll casting so that Blue Scribe can use Fold of Reality, or Karos might cast Bolt of Tzeentch from the Lord of Change, because not Bolt of Tzeentch because he can't know that spell. He might cast the ogroid spell of D6 mortal wounds, because he maybe has taken, like, let's say 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wounds. I did my leadership check and I failed it. I rolled 11 or 12 and I need to heal up for the next turn. And my Karos's ability of doing 6 mortal wounds is not 6 mortal wounds anymore. It's D6 because I've taken so many wounds. So I'll take the ogroid and I'll kill a unit of whatever crap like skinks, and I'll kill 4 or 5 of them. And I killed 5 skinks. Well, I heal 5 wounds. Now my Karos Fate Weaver can do a 6 mortal wound against something else. And so that's the reason why you take the ogroid. So now you got to think about what you have. You have, let's keep going. See, now you have the change caster.
Can I pause you 1 second?
Yeah.
Just two things I've been burning about with the host Arcanum, and you've already talked a little bit about one, which is the summoning of 6 screamers. Yeah. Have you found that's been helpful to explore some of the battle tactics, like being in your opponent's territory? Are you finding them valuable just more for screens?
Most of the armies I've been playing, so to your point, yes.
Even Unleash Hell, Unleash Hell, that could work really nicely too. Just a free 100%. Unit to kind of go send up.
100%. And I've blocked them off where I had to keep them within, of course, coherency. And I forgot to even mention earlier, that's one thing I would change with coherency. Please make it 6 and not 5.
Yeah, I would definitely support that. Like the amount of 6 units that go incrementally up by 3s, and you go from 3 Gorg runners to 6 Gorg runners, 3 screamers to 6. It's like that incentive, that one model. It's like, please just kill one. Just kill one of my models. Yeah. Can I come in as like undermanned, or can I just get extra wound? Yeah,
correct.
I would agree. Yeah. It's just
6.
It's stupid. It's silly.
That's the only thing I would say 6. But going, going forward, I forgot where my brain.
That's all right. Let me ask you the other question next. I said there was 2 things I wanted to ask you. One was about the use of your screamers, around, because I see them as utility pieces, right? You could be in the backfield, you could use them as a screen, you could bring them on early, you could bring them on late, because there is no particular time. It's just once per battle, hero phase. So if you need them in turn 5 to use Predator's Domain and kind of claim a terrain piece, or if you want to get them in the backfield and then summon something else. There's a lot of utility with that one. And then the other question I was going to ask you about was, how impactful is the Thieves of All Things Arcane to you? Because I imagine, being able to, especially like turn 1, there are some armies that love to throw down the bridge or the spell portal. And if you want to get rid of that, having the in the 1st, 3rd, and 5th battle round using an auto unbind for an endless spell could be really powerful.
100%. So we'll touch on the screamers first, because I had a brain fart there.
Cool.
That's 100% right. Sometimes I'll go balls to the wall with the screamers, where I'm going to summon them turn 1. I'm going to spend a command dice in the hero phase to give them the rend. I'm going to do reckless abandonment so that each one has 4 attacks each, and I can charge a giant, and all 6 can get hit, even with the coherency, because the bases are 40 millimeters, and you can actually, if you measure perfectly, and that's why I magnetize them all, so I can like bend them, and as long as the base doesn't move, you can make it work. You can make them hit, and they hit, because they're you put a character nearby that pluses to hit. Now they're hitting on 3s. They're -1 rend, D3 damage against monsters. It could be damage, or against like my brother. I had to play him. It was ridiculous, and he's a very great player too. I used them as screens. I had a house and a big mountain, and I'm like, boom, right there. What are you gonna do, bro? Like, you're not getting past me. And I'm stupid. I didn't even think about it. My brother's playing Iron Jaws with, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to charge you," and
He's smashing
your
your
charge
bastion.
face, and I was like, "Oh damn!"
And then he bounces
What
off
the
you and
hell?
just hits you, and then
Pissed me
bounces
off,
off
man.
you.
I was so mad, and my brother's over there smiling. He's like, "I got you," and I'm like, "This little bastard," and of course he goes next, and I'm like, "All right, we're gonna play Karos then," and I'm like, "You failed your charge," and we did the roll off, and if he won the game. If I won, I destroyed. So it was, yeah, you can use screamers to do a whole bunch of stuff. You just got to know who you're playing and what they can do.
But I love the
and of course,
utility. Like I
backwards.
think the
Yes.
key that I wanted to kind of bring out of you, and you've nailed it on the head. Like, by the way, like the amount of passion, I think this is becoming one of my favorite shows this year. So Caleb, you've been an absolute legend, and everyone, even like the non-Zench players, are just like, I'm now falling in love. This was just as
Awesome.
planned. This is just as planned. It's always been a part of the plan, and we welcome you into the crystal labyrinth that is the mighty of Zench. That it has been a lot of fun, but I think the screamers, six is nothing to laugh at. Like there's a lot of cool things where it is tagging and tying up an opponent, being able to bring it on for a battle tactic, to screen, to avoid unleash hell. You got that unit of 30 sentinels. You might be able to bring them on the table. Use some cheaty dice, your fate dice, to get that charge. Hit the sentinels, tie them up a little bit, tag them on the side so you can kind of make them only shoot the sentinels. The utility value for me is why I love this army as a toolbox, and I love that screamer idea.
100%, and that's the point of Tzeentch. Like that's the passion behind it. Is it can do anything, and when I get over to the Skyfires is when it just becomes crazy. But to your second question, repeat it one more time. Your second question.
The other one was talking about, it was the abilities, the Thieves of All Things Arcane. So
okay.
The first, third, and fifth battle round, you can auto unbind an endless spell.
To be quite honest with everyone, with being able to cast in a spell 13 spells, you almost never need it. But there are certain circumstances where it's really great to have. When you're playing against somebody like Teclis, where he can cast 4 spells with a 10+, you kind of force him just to do his 1 spell, and that limits his entire ability. You're like, okay, you can get your 5 aboard save, but that's all you get, because if you try to cast it with 10s, I'm going to instantly dispel it. Or against Croak, like, okay, use one of your 4. I'm going to stop your first one that kills D3 to all my units, and I'm going to make sure I'm out of range of your ability that can cast 3 times. And so it is very valuable. And then I remember watching Vince's channel with Tyler, and he was mentioning the Tzeentch model that has Glean Magic, where he can copy somebody's spell, and if he ever dispels a spell, he gets to cast that spell automatically. And I wasn't thinking about it when he talked about it. I forgot the name of it. It's too. I'm
having a mind blank too. It's not the Changeling, is it?
It's not. It's. I don't want to get.
That's all right. It's all good. You keep talking.
Yeah, he has 2 spell casting. He has Glean Magic, where it's a 24-inch spell. He can copy somebody's spell and be able to cast it. If he ever dispels a spell, he actually gets to cast it right away, right? So if I'm playing against Croak and he casts his unlimited range, spell, and automatically I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to use my once per, turn 1 to dispel it, and then I get to cast it during his turn, and he can't dispel it. I forgot the name. It's killing me right now. Oh, here, it's Curseling. It's the Curseling.
The Curseling. That bloody Curseling.
It's the Curseling. And I have the model fully painted, Christmased up. It looks amazing. And I haven't even played it once. But once I saw Tyler talk about it, I was like, man, and maybe that's what I do with my list. I put them in there because nothing will be funnier than, copying somebody's spells to learn it, or dispelling their spell and being able to cast it and they can't dispel it at all. And so it's just a little bit of fine wine when you're playing somebody, and just their thought of maybe they don't want to cast any spells because they're afraid that you're going to copy it, right? And so now you change their whole game plan, maybe their buffs or what it might be. But yeah, it's definitely devastating to an opponent, being able to do the first, the third, and the fifth, and knowing you have that extra tool in your belt, and it's there.
Just being able to shut down things like, like someone's going to throw up the breach, for example. Some of these armies have like a really, alpha strike turn 1. I'm going to do all this
one-dimensional.
Yeah, like and you can clearly see what they want to do, right? So it's like, boom, no breach, and it's like, right, if they want the breach, they've got to go the honest way, or you've delayed them at least a turn, and then you do your thing.
Correct, and you're right, because you have like the dwarf army, the Iron Drakes. They want to go on the bridge and destroy you, and you're just like, that's not going to happen, man. Because and maybe I don't have the curse, like maybe I just have acolytes, and I'm just like, my acolyte's going to dispel it. They're at the front of the whole thing, and I'm going to use my acolyte champion. It's dispelled because I'm within 30 inches of them. Maybe my characters aren't, and you can use that as well. So it's definitely fun.
Putting you on the spot before we continue with any other shenanigans you got, the chat keeps busting my chops about the Warcry warband. Is it the Eyes of the Nine? Now, I haven't seen many people using Eyes of the Nine, and I don't know why. I haven't quite looked at it, so I'm maybe looking for you some advice. Is this something that you just don't have enough points for? It doesn't have the role in your army? Maybe some secret list tech? Like, where are you at with this Underworld's warband?
So I haven't seen it, to be quite honest, and I would love to see it. And you guys are getting me excited because it's something I haven't seen yet. I'm going through my half-baked, Games Workshop, War Scroll app that they just came out with, and I don't see it under the War Scrolls for Tzeentch. The Eyes of Nine. Oh, I see it right here.
Yeah, the Eyes of Nine.
Yet, so.
I think the one thing that interests me, and I haven't looked at the points yet, so bear this in mind. But one of the things that I like is that spell there, the Sorcerer's Insight, that casts on a 5. If you cast it, you receive 1 extra command point, but the command point can only be spent to use at the double Forward to Victory or Inspiring Presence. So if you need the CP and you need that Forward to Victory or at the double, cool. Otherwise, it's just kind of, there's another rule, is Magic Touch. So if this casting roll for a model is double and the cast attempt is successful and not unbound, can cast 1 extra spell. For friendly Magister is slain on a 2+, a Chaos Spawn is set up. And then it's obviously some conditions. So
where's this? Where is this? You said it's the.
Oh no, I'm looking at the hero, the Vortimus, the All-Seeing.
All-Seeing. Okay, it's not in here,
it's all
so
good.
I can't actually.
It's all good. I think the point is, like, it's okay. I think it's okay. I haven't seen them in any competitive lists, or at least ones that are doing well in the meta. But
yeah, I mean,
I'll
take a look.
You do you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the best part about this. I mean, play what you love. I remember when I was playing in 7th edition, I loved the Wood Elves. I loved the fact that I'm all skirmishing back when everyone's rank and filed. You couldn't see me. I'm shooting you. I'm in the woods. You can't see me. It was so tactical and so much fun. And do what floats your boat. It's definitely true.
Would you? So that was responding to Hades, who was asking me a question earlier. But then Jonathan was talking about like the underworld, the Warcry warbands. Whether it's the Iron Golems, whether it's the Untamed Beasts. Have you thought about any of those Slaves to Darkness cultists? Because you don't get the cultist battle line stuff. That's only for slaves. But they are like 75, 80 points, 70 points for a cheap block of unit. That's not battle line, but it's a cheap screen.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to my list, it's the reason I kind of hesitate to change it is, what do you take out?
Yeah.
Right. If you go to my next thing, like the change caster, kind of touching him. He's an auto include, by the way, in my list, because I sent an FAQ in and they answered it. Said, if you roll a 9+, can you keep casting a spell? And they said yes. I'm like, oh, this is broken. Okay, this is great. Machine gun, here we go. And so he's a level 1 caster, but if he makes a 9+ to cast, he gets to cast an extra spell. So like, all right, well, his first spell, it goes off in a 9, and it's pink fire, and it does D6 mortal wounds. And you're like, wait, I rolled a 9+ because I rolled 3 dice. It's a 1-use ability. I rolled a 10 +1 because of my Lord of Change. So, and you also use the agenda that says if you roll a 9 twice, you get +1 to your casting. And so, first one, I just got a 9. Great. Meanwhile, your opponent has no more dispels because you've already went through your Lord of Change, where your Lord of Change is doing his 9 mortal wounds.
You never tried it. You almost never try to unbind the Lord of Change unless he rolls rubbish and like barely passes, rolls 2 3s or 2 4s because you matched the lowest with the highest. You just don't try against Lord of Change.
But it depends on what you're targeting, because sometimes I'll tell my opponent, like, I'm going to kill your caster, and if you don't stop this, he's dead. And so they know
in that situation,
you don't give them an option, right?
And
then all of a sudden you're at your 13th casting and you're like, all right, change caster, here we go. D6 mortal wounds, but it's going in the air because nobody's in range. And then your next spell, you're like, all right, I'm going to become a monster. You have no more dispelling attempts. you re-roll it. You're like, I got a 9, I got an 8, which is +1 to a 9. Now I got my hidden agenda, right? So now I get +2 to cast. So now all you need to roll is a re-rollable 7, which is very easy to do in my opinion. You just re-roll until you get a re-rollable 7. Yep. Oh, now that unit's gonna have +1 to their save, and you're up re-rollable 7. You're like, all right, my guy's gonna have that orb of 12-inch mortal wound, or if you get within 3 inches, D3 mortal wounds. Like, I'm gonna cast his arcane suggestion on. It's gonna go on the Lord of Change's weapon, and then you're like, I'm gonna do Soul Scream Shackles out there, and now I've casted 7 spells, in one turn. And then if you don't need Soul Scream Shackles before you end your hero phase, you just say Lord of Change is going to dispel it because it happened in the hero phase. So you have 7 from your Change caster, you got 1 from your Ogroid, you got 1 from Blue, you got 3 from Karos, you got 2 from Lord of Change, and you're upwards of 13 spells, 13 plus spells, and you summon a free unit 10 blues, and then next turn you keep going and you get your pinks, and it's great, and if you go back and look at how many mortal wounds Lord of Change, upwards of 9. Bolt of Tzeentch, upwards of 6. Karos, guaranteed 6. Unchecked Mutation, D3. Change Caster, D6. Ogroid, D6, but heals. And the amount of mortal wounds, to your point, yes, I don't worry too much about save stacking because I'm going through your save, right? And then now you get to the Acolytes. Now they have their spell 2, and they have a natural +1 to cast.
That's
and it
just adding rend, right? But it's
great. -1 rend is amazing. People lately have been saying, -1 rend's not that great, but it depends on who you're targeting. Target the person who has the 5-up armor save, or that core that has a 5-up armor save, and start whittling down their battle line, or target whatever their grand strategy is. Start targeting that, or just put extra damage. I'm like, all right, I'm going to target Archeon first with these 10 dice, and they're like, okay, +1 to save. You're like, okay, well the other 2 units are going to go after something else now, because I was just kind of getting you to spend your command dice for fun, and
I guess for you as well, like there's a lot of save stacking, and you're right. Like when people start looking at Rend 1, yes, it's not as valuable against a 2-up or a 3-up or a 1-up armor save. Cool, but you still come up against 4-up, 5-up, 6-ups, and if you happen to be able to roar on somebody with a monstrous rampage, stopping them from using all-out defense, because of your magical supremacy, there's a really good chance you can stop people from casting Mystic Shield. All of a sudden, then it does make sense, because they're not save stacking nearly as much as other armies would normally do against, you're really gatekeeping a lot of that, and you've got a lot of tools to bypass it with the mortal wounds. So you're right. I agree with you, and I've said this many times. I don't hate Rend 1. It's different, it's valuable, but it's situational. Rend 1's going to do nothing against 2-up Blood Knights. It's just not worth it.
Possibly, because I forgot to mention the Ogroid has Arcane Suggestion as a spell. And that spell is amazing. It's one of my freaking favorite spells in my book. It's a Swiss Army knife spell. And you can pick 3 abilities. The first ability is just a flat D3 mortal wounds. It's okay, but it's another D3. The next part of that spell you can pick is a model within 18 inches, and they're -1 to hit and -1 to wound, right? And that is actually very powerful, considering that if you target a demon Tzeentch hero, or a unit that's demon within 12 inches of a demon Tzeentch, you're -1 to hit. So now you have opponents who can't even do the +1 to hit, because they're always going to be -1 because they're -2. And they're also -1 to wound. And so now Archeon is, guaranteed -1, and he's also -1 to wound. It makes them harder to hit and harder to get his stuff off, no matter who you pick. And then last ability is -1 to their armor save. And so now you pick a unit, you're like, that unit's -1 of the armor save. I'm going to put all 3 units of 30 Acolytes into them and the Skyfires, and now you kill them. So depending on who you face, maybe it's the big old 2-up armor save dragon, the new dragon model, whatever he's called. I can't remember all these names.
That's all right. You've got Scar and Mufasa, and then you've got like the 8 or 12 Stormdrake Guard, depending on how much burninating those Stormcasts want to do.
Yeah, and you just subtract their armor save, and then you can charge them in with like the Lord of Change fully buffed up 3-up. Can't give yourself +1 to save, and it's a lie. But we'll talk about the Skyfires. They're my favorite model ever, and the reason I like them so much is I remember when I first played. I played 18 of them, and I love them so much. And I remember I rolled up to Joe Cryer, and he's a friend of mine, and he was like, "Why do you have 18? They're not even good." And I just was like, oh, you're going to learn today. Oh, you're going to learn today. I'm going to teach you something. And it was the most amazing experience. I love him. And I remember because the way they work, if you guys don't know, they fly 16 inches. They're kind of a glass cannon. So they fly 16 inches. They do have 4 wounds. So they're kind of tough in that sense, right? But they only have a 5-up save, right? So kind of in terms of, the save, but amazing movement, 16. And when I played in the Summer Slaughter, I took the Beast of Chaos, Great Shaman,
the Great Brave Shaman.
Yeah, he adds 3 inches to their moves. So now they're 19-inch moves.
Because they're Brayherd keyworded, so they do tap into some of the Beast of Chaos stuff.
Yeah. Now again, I have to change some things. I have to read that thing that you guys were talking about the Beast of Chaos versus regular Tzeentch.
I'm sure you'll make it work. Should that rule be in play, folks? So the fact that Kaleb's brought in a Beast of Chaos Zengor Skyfires as opposed to a Disciples of Tzeentch Chaos Skyfires, even though they would be 1 in 4 coalition. If that is not a loophole that Kaleb can horribly exploit, I'm sure your list science could find the 10 points somewhere to go into the legitimate model.
100%. It's gonna be the shackles. I'll figure out another inland spell or two that I will mess with, because I'll be honest, all the times I play with shackles, it's good, but it's not like, to me, game changing. But we'll go over that. But back to the Skyfires.
Not for you. Like, shackles is nice to have. For some other armies, it is important, but not for you.
Yeah, it's nice to have. It's not necessary. But so again, Skyfires, the way they work, they move 16, they shoot 24 inches. They have a 1 shot each. And they hit on 4s, except the champion hits on a 3. And they wound on 3s. Excuse me, they hit on 4s, 4s, and they wound on 3s. They're -1 rend, and they do D3 damage. However, if they roll a 6 to hit, an unmodified 6, it's just a flat D3 mortal wounds. And when you have cheating dice, if you roll lucky, and you get like 2 or 3 6s, you're like, you know what? These 2 are going to be 6s, or these 3 are going to be 6s, and you just kill a character on turn 1 while you charge something else. Another reason I like them so much is when they attack, as long as I attack you first, which happens unless you have always strikes first, I get to reroll all my hits, and I get to reroll all my wounds, right? And rerolling all your hits and wounds is crazy. Now, you'll look at my profile, and you go, it's not that great, because I only have 2 bow attacks each, so that's 6 attacks, and they hit on 5s, and they wound on 5s. Whatever, but I'm re-rolling, so you're going to get a few. Then you have the beak attack, which hits on a 4, wounds on a 5. You're going to do okay. But what really matters is the actual disc, where it does D3 attacks each, hit on 4s, wound on 3s, -1 D3 damage. Now, 3 of them are good, 6 of them are great, 9 of them are crazy. But what makes them also good is reckless abandonment. Right? Depending on if I don't want to use it for my my screamers, I can use it for my Skyfires. And now it's 3 attacks for the bows, 2 attacks for the beaks, and D3 +1 for the discs. And if I'm using Arcane Suggestion to make something -1 armor, now my regular attacks are -1 and my disc are -2. Right? And now you're pumping out so much damage. I put out 20 something wounds just with 3 guys. And it's very, very strong, and it's very surprising just for 3 models. And so that's why I take them. Really great shooting, good abilities with the cheating dice, very fast, 4 wounds each, so 12 wounds. They can hit like a hammer. They can clean up a giant. If you get them down with a bunch of wounds after you've done like 25 mortal wounds, you can finish them off with Skyfires.
Yeah, they're not your primary threat, but they have finished them off. To Jonathan's point, Jonathan. So this is probably my experience with the Skyfires is you normally see them tag teaming with the Enlightened. So
correct.
They've got 2 different rules. So the Skyfires get the re-rolls if an enemy hasn't fought in combat, and then the Enlightened will get the re-rolls if an enemy has fought. So the order of sequence would be Skyfires, let your opponent fight, then let your Enlightened fight. Although, Kaleb, you can't make those battle line because you can't double reinforce them to be a 9 because there's no way to make them battle line, or am I missing something?
9 was AOS 1. I was talking
the old one.
When I first came out, that was when it was broken. I was just mentioning that somebody told me they weren't good, and I started laughing.
They were great. And then you have like the little hero on disc. That's another thing.
+1 to hit.
And then fold reality to bring you'd have a unit of 6 or 9, then fold reality, bring them back.
And Karos can change the dice, and like you rolled a 1 with Karos, you're like, no, it's any dice roll. So that 1's a 6. So I got 6 Skyfires back, and you're like, okay, this is stupid. I quit. It was interesting back then.
I think in AOS 1, Kairos could change the priority role, if I remember correctly.
In the very beginning, yes, and then they kind of fixed that pretty quickly. They're like, yeah,
it was just
that's too much. They're like, yes, this is pretty good. But that's why I've taken Kairos since every edition. That ability, even AOS 2, it's when you can stop a big monster like Gordrak from charging because he's going to murder your whole army. You're like, no, he fails. That is just game changing because you're going to go next. That's game changing. You're going to kill it because he has no mortal wound protection. And so it's good. And of course, Portal is different in AOS 3 than it is AOS 2 because now the way Portal works is you pick a model and one portal goes 18 inches one direction and then the other portal goes 18 inches the other direction. So you can actually daisy chain, a model over here, and now your model has like a 60-inch spell the way it works now versus what it did before. So that's why I take that. And so
and those attack, they're not allies. The Skyfires. We're going to clarify Skyfires. Yeah. We don't. If there's a loophole, we might have exploited. If not, we'll just manipulate the soul snare shackles to find a cheaper endless spell. So, and appropriately point them. So the issue, the list and the points don't change slightly. And to be honest with you, like I said, the soul snare shackles to what you do is not that important. You probably could still take it's chronomatic cogs 45 now, so you could probably still throw down chronomatic.
I still take cogs.
So you swap that out to cogs, get an extra spell cast, slow down time, and boom, you're still playing to your strengths. So it's should this be a minor error, I'm not too worried about it because it doesn't fundamentally change what you're trying to achieve here.
Correct. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the next change, the next FAQ that says, Caleb, you can't play with your models, so you're gonna have to figure something else out. All right, I'll figure it out. Let's do it.
How do you stay positive with Zench? Because you and probably Lumineth and KO, actually, I could keep rattling. Like, you guys always get like the nerf bat. You're always like,
100%. I love it.
Perceived as a bit of an NPE as well. Like, especially like, pink horrors. People are like, oh, I don't want to play pink horrors. And you love pink horrors. The problem for me is my whole shelf here is full of demon models because that's what I collected in fantasy battles because you only had warriors of chaos or you had demons of chaos. You never had a combined force. It was pure, and I would always do demons, and I loved the pink horrors. And it kind of got to a point where, because I was only playing them casually, and the change host was the battalion that I really liked, I actually didn't play with it that much because I didn't want to be that guy. Despite, and I didn't probably use them nearly as much as I want to. So, how do you stay positive and motivated and excited about Tzeentch despite?
It's one of those things to where it's I know Tzeentch is, because of the way the book was made, is kind of, in my opinion, the best book, right? No other book can compare to Tzeentch, in my personal opinion, because it doesn't matter what they do to the game, Tzeentch will have some type of answer for it, and that's why I love Tzeentch. I don't care how much they nerf, because it could get to a point where they nerf it, like, okay, Caleb, your Lord of Change is 1,000 points. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm not taking that model, right? It could get to the point where they just completely kill the army. But I at the point that it's at now, they keep nerfing it every single edition. They keep making the stuff more expensive, and the exciting part is finding these things. Like, I just figured out the Curseling. I figured out, like, I watched a show, someone talked about Curseling, and now I'm excited about trying it. He's a level 2 caster. I'm going to dispel a spell. I'm going to cast that spell in their turn, and they're going to be like, that sucked. And I'm looking forward to that moment of just trying something new. So I don't play this army against my friends on friendly play day unless I'm preparing for a tournament like I am for the U.S. Open in New Orleans. I'll practice it with them, but I mostly play something fun. And so when you go to the tournament, another reason I like it so much is I get to teach sometimes. You play against these guys, on turn 1, 2, or 3. When you get to 4 or 5, you're playing against people who know what you do. I've already played these guys multiple times in multiple years on the top tables in my area, so, but in the beginning, you're actually able to teach people, and you're like, okay, let me explain how my stuff works. This is how it goes. And, you're able to give them feedback and coaching, and it's an enjoyable experience to prepare them when they play somebody else. And so, I don't know. I love it. I love the models. I love the way it works. The casting, the variety, the Swiss Army knife ability, the cheating dice, the free shit, the agendas, the battalions, the grand strategies, the books changing, the actual mission. I mean, I played a mission against Marathi, was it 20? No, it was 15
15 bow snakes. 15 bow snakes.
I played against
Trek?
10 coast. No, I played. Okay, so I played against that too. I played against like the hardest people possible in Summer Slot. I can go through the whole thing, but James O'Brien, one of the best players on ITC. I think he's ranked like number 2 or 3 on overall. I played him, and he had Marathi, 15 bow snakes, 10 bow snakes, the Medusa, the spell. He had the whole kit and caboodle, and I got lucky as hell. He kept getting my Lord of Change down to like 1 wound, and I'm like, heal, and it was kind of funny, but seeing these armies and playing them, it's just amazing. And I also played, the next game was against Marathi and Gortrek, and the game before that was the 3 flying dudes, like I mentioned, at 30 people. Then I played against a giant army too, and then my last game is the game I lost against actually a Flesh Eater Court. Man, that was such a surprising how they work, now in AOS 3.
The Grizzle, was it the Grizzle Gore list?
It wasn't Gristle Gore. It was he had 5 units of 3 of the Vargeist, the bats.
Like the old Dead Watch.
Yep, he had those. He had a giant, and he also had a turkey, and he had 2 or 3 of the bigger Vargeist guys. And what makes it so powerful is when you stand and shoot when you're next to each other, and so you're no longer -2 to those dice rolls because you're standing and shooting closer. So he's rolling stand and shoot, 2 dice your leadership, 2 dice your leadership, 2 dice your leadership. And he did roll like Jesus, I will say. I've never seen someone roll like Jesus like that in my life. I almost brought the bucket of water, but I said, Caleb, don't do it. Don't do it. I was like, this man,
was that Sousa?
Yeah, it was Sousa. I love him.
Oh, I mean, the captain of the ITC, or the
he's great.
The worlds. Like, Bill Sousa is like one of the best players that I know. I mean,
no, he was a lot of fun, and but it was shocking. I kept making faces because I was like, you just rolled a 12. I was like, you just rolled another 12. You just rolled 11. That's another 11. What are you doing? it was fun, and I enjoyed playing it. But that's the game where I kind of messed up and I put my stuff too far in the corner to gain the +1 to casting. I should have kept it in the middle because I wasted so many turns of not spelling casting because I wasn't within range. And that was my mistake. So, but no, I enjoy it. I love it. And I look forward to the next challenge.
I think it's a counterplay for me with Zench. It's the fact, because that's the type of army I like to play. And part of my resistance to not taking up Bow Snake Marathi is because I don't like to have a plan going in. I'm someone who really likes to understand the opponent and plan and almost like play, like a game of chess, like one piece at a time. And that's kind of why I don't go that route. And I think that's where Zench plays a really good strength. Is like, right, I've got a toolkit. I can summon, I can do magic, I can do all this stuff, and I just do the right thing at the right time. And if I happen to have a very combat-heavy army, I've got answers. If I go have a magic army, I've got answers. If I got shooting, I've got answers. And I think, Zench, as long as you don't lose like your big casters, like your bin chicken, you're normally in the game. It's like the minute you lose that bin chicken, it's where like Carriage and Overlords. And someone mentioned earlier about KO flying high, dropping down, just like shooting it off.
Yep.
The minute you lose the Lord of Change, that's where you often find Tzeentch collapses. I mean, you've got 2, so you've got the Kairos and Lord of Change, so it's less impactful. But that's really especially if you can get them early. And if anyone's watching this, I know very early on people from Lumineth were like, how do I beat Zench? How do I beat Zench? You've just got to take down that Lord of Change quickly because, things collapse.
Correct. I mean, I will 100% agree with that statement because it is, if you're playing a competitive game, I find the most important part of the game is just talking to your opponent. Can you tell me what your stuff does? And really what you're really asking is, can you tell me how to beat you? And that's really the question. Like, how far can you move? Can you run and shoot? Can you teleport? How far? Okay, you shoot 30, you move 5. You have no other abilities to make your range. I'm 36 inches away. And with important key stuff. Or if you're in a terrain that's invisible and it's kind of further up, you're like, all my stuff's in the terrain. You can't see me. And you don't have the vortex of the rat guys to just sit on all my models. Or if you're playing against the vortex, knowing, don't put your stuff near each other. Separate those bad boys out, make sure that they can't monopolize and just destroy a whole bunch with their free spell in the bottle, or if they shoot you, be cautious of using your +1 to save right away, depending on what's shooting you. right? Now, if they're unloading the biggest and best thing against one target, okay, use it there. But if they're just hitting with the pot shots first, be cautious before you say, okay, that Lord of Change is +1, because then he's just going to go, Karos is my target, and you're absolutely right. Just asking your opponent how their army works and playing the game and really thinking about measuring and movement, and of course planning out your battle tactics.
KO really teaches you that lesson as well, because you might try to screen your opponent, right? You put your battle line here, and you put your characters here, but when you don't understand like measuring and pre-range and like, right, cool, they're going to be outside of 9, but a lot of their guns are happening in 12 or 18, right? So really what I need is to push them out further, deploy further back. And then, for example, it could be the pre-game move. If you can pre-move 5 inches or 6 inches, all of a sudden now that gap is much further back and you're pushing them out. And I think Stormcast are going to remind people about the importance of those alpha strike, coming in from reserve, dropping outside of 9, hurricane crossbows, some type of like really deadly shooting, some of the re-roll charge shenanigans that they have as well. So they're going to drop down, charge in, re-roll that charge. So really screening and protecting your troops, especially your squishy characters at the back, is going to be very critical. And how much can you absorb damage? And whether it's going to be through the Acolyte shields, pink horrors, the free screamers that you can summon on, you're going to need chaff. Otherwise, they're going to get in and they're going to punch you, and you can't punch hard, especially if you lose those key pieces.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question to kind of bring it home. It's a really good one, actually, because the other terror in the meta, your mate Joe Cryer running around with 3 or 4 foxes, maybe even 5 at one point. Yep. Yeah, he's got like Severeth and then 3 foxes, terrorizing people. Mm-hmm. One of my guests who did the Gargant show was, I think, one of Joe's opponents at a different event. And how do you defeat these foxes when they're running around? Is it going to be just mortal wounds from range, or... Mm-hmm.
So there's multiple ways of doing it. So I played against 3 of them. I decided to go first. And this is where your opponent, if they're not being careful against you, even though you ask you all these questions, I get my free 6-inch move. So what I'll do is, it first comes down to deployment. So I'll deploy my 3-character battalion first, right? And sometimes if people are playing a 1-drop, 2 or 3, you'll see where some of their key pieces are, like a fox. Right. And as soon as they place their fox, if they're a 5-drop, then you're like, okay, my Lord of Change is going to go right there, or Karos is going to go right there. Right. Or Lord of Change really is going to go right there, because Karos needs to spell in the portal to deal with those 30, archers. And so then I'll get my free 6-inch move with Lord of Change. And now I have Infernal Gateway and Bolt of Tzeentch to kill 1 fox. Right. Or what you can do is Karos can then go spell portal, 6 mortal wounds on your other fox, Skyfires, 2 cheating dice, 2nd fox is dead. I'm going to teleport, then I'm going to summon 10 blue horrors on that objective, and now I hold more objectives you, boo. I ran all 3 monsters, and now I'm at 6 victory points on turn 1, and you only have 2 foxes left. So there's multiple ways of handling it with Tzeentch, but I do understand the pain of trying to handle it with other people, because foxes can be very, I'm going to move all 4, right in front of you. You're go. Okay, you're moving face now 12 inches back, and now you're stuck. Let's do it again. Like, I understand. So when you're playing the game, I would say, if you want to do tournament, you have to kill giants, number 1. They're the gatekeeper army. They're the 4-1 army. You have to be able to kill giants. So build your list to kill giants, number 1. Then build your list to, in my opinion, to kill, have an answer for close combat, because what will happen, like I mentioned earlier, is close combat armies tend to kill the shooting armies, except for like the Joe Cryer Fox thing. Which then it only leaves you with the top tier armies, the combat armies, the Lumineth, the Sylvaneth, not Sylvaneth, the Lizardmen, the Tzeentch, the Archeon.
First off, Sylvaneth players, like, clip that. Like, that literally there's that 1 second that Kaleb said that you're a top tier army. I love you, Sylvaneth, but you're not right now.
No, you'll
clip it. It's gonna be the best video in your life. But you're right, yeah. Like, combat armies. If you can. And I think this kind of, when you start going to the top tables, you really start, low drops really becomes important, right?
Very important.
Choosing. And, you're going, absolutely choosing. Yes. So when I say, choosing who goes first, right? And that kind of comes down to how much threat do you have? Can you give away the first turn, because essentially you're giving away one whole magic phase that people are not going to be in range for magic, or it's going to be very minimal. So, and I think for you especially, you really want to dictate who goes first, because if someone gets the drop on you and starts shooting off your heroes, it becomes a very hard mission to achieve.
Correct. 100%. Like, and I'm scared of shooting armies. Like, that's what Tzeentch is scared of. And they should be, and the meta is going a little bit shooting, or deep striking with mortal wounds. And so,
long range shooting, right? Like, like you don't care about handgunners, but what you care about is the bridge that then brings up the Iron Drakes who are now in range, just goes pew, pew, pew.
Correct. And but we have an answer for that, the spell scroll, so it's there's a lot. I highly recommend anyone who's looking to get into a more of a complex army, something that will honestly stay with them for many, many years and will have answers to most things. Tzeentch is just it's the bomb. It's phenomenal. It does take a long time to get really good at it. You will forget a lot of stuff. Just play against friends, and again, cheating dice, free shit, agendas, and you get all the other stuff that everyone else gets. So it's great.
I just had a brain fart, and then we're going to wrap up. Flamers of Tzeentch.
Yeah.
Are they good for Unleash Hell?
They can do Unleash Hell, and it can work. It's still -1 rend, so you can double reinforce them because they count as battle line. So you can have 9 Flamers. With Fall to Reality, that's 18 wounds because they're 2 wounds each, and they're -1 to hit and shooting and combat because your Lord of Change is going to stay near them with the -1 to shoot at them and -1 to that. So it's good. The problem is they're very expensive for their points, and so they're good. But that, to me, that's more of you place that to somebody who's competitive but not extremely competitive. Somebody who wants to win. You could try it out. It is a lot of fun. It's just I don't think it's good enough right now to do a 5-5, 5-0.
Because you got them to rend. Because you got them to rend 2 at one stage. Like when this book dropped,
Exalted Flamers.
Well, Exalted Flamers, but also just regular Flamers with the Exalted Hero. That was one of these like drop down within 12, burn, burn, burn. That was a popular build at one point. Is it the internal conflagration, or one of the sub allegiances gave you the extra -1, so it became -2?
It was so the Flamers have no rend. So Conflagration gave regular Flamers -1, Exalted Flamers -2.
Yes, that was
so that's and you're absolutely right. It became very nasty, and it's still to this day it's very good. I mean, if you take an all shooting, all your whores are -1 shots, all your Flamers are -1, all your Exalted are -2. You can take your Lord of Change, you can take his 18-inch shot at 2d6 3s on 3s -1 damage. I mean, you can pump out a lot of -1s or -2s. The problem is with the point cost of AOS 3 have really kicked that army out of the bucket. And that's kind of what I mentioned earlier. With the points cost and the coalition spells, they've really pigeonholed competitive players to 2 types of armies with the Tzeentch book. And I really would like them to open it up a little bit more. And I think they will with Beast of Chaos coming out with a new book where I'll be able to take, 1 out of 4 and really spice up my army with some different options.
No, and I will probably agree with Coach Polito is that this has been amazing. And if you do ask Tzeentch what their plan is, being that they see both the past and the future, never the present, they will obviously have a very detailed plan for you, to very on-brand kind of strategy. But Kaleb, this has been awesome, man. I've learned so much hearing from you and how you're thinking about the army, because it is one of my favorite armies. I really do enjoy it. And I'm actually, when I saw the pink horror changes, I was somebody who was actually really excited. One, as an opponent, because it is quite oppressive. My last game against the pink horrors, I was running Gits, and you can imagine how that went.
They were not happy.
No, I did. It took us a while to chew through those models, but also as someone who owns 40 pink horrors, 60 blues, and 60 brims, I really want an opportunity to bring them out on the table and still have a really good time. So I know they're competitive, but equally they've been toned down a little bit, not nearly nerfed like some other models in the game. But is there anything that you want to say, kind of wrap this up? If people want to talk to you and kind of chat more about your builds, are you on the socials anywhere?
So I have 3 kids. I'm married. My wife barely lets me out of the house. If you're ever in Maryland, if you ever go to, I'm going to New Orleans. I go to Adapticon almost every year. I go, oh, a big shout out actually. I want to say, if you guys are ever in, PA area, the place I like to go is Palladium Games. They have, every time it's a smaller tournament, not a ton of space, but if you win third place or second place, you're getting 5 or 6 times your money in prize support, clean atmosphere. It's in Phoenixville, PA. It's an amazing place. Mike D runs a really clean shop. And if you ever had the chance to go to Summer Slaughter, I've never experienced prize support like this in my life at Summer Slaughter, where every place got a whole army. I'm watching it, I'm just like, holy crap, there's like 13 boxes, and each set is over $300 to $400. I'm watching, I'm like, and it's so clean, so many players, so competitive at Palladium Games or at Summer Slaughter, and it's such a great atmosphere of people. And so I don't do really social media, but I am on your Discord. I am on Discord. People can email me. It's literally my name at Gmail. I don't email me whatever you want. I don't care. I'll respond.
If you get a fax number, I can send you a fax.
I swear, it's Kaleb Walters at Gmail. I don't care. I'll put it out there. If you have your questions about Tzeentch, or if you want to show me something I'm not thinking about, I would love to see it. Tzeentch has been.
Does Team Deadpile mean anything to you? Because people.
Okay.
The entire stream, I keep getting Team Deadpile.
Let me tell you. So I'm playing a tournament. It's at Nova Open. And it's Virginia, and I'm playing against a guy, and I love him. I love him so much. And he's playing Nurgle, and I'm playing literally, like tons of Skyfires, casting. It's the whole kit and caboodle. And during the game, I have my dead pile as I'm losing models, and I keep putting them in my dead pile like everyone else would. And he's coming, I'm killing him, and all of a sudden, towards the middle of the end of the game, when like the game, it's over, right? I see him move his models to this way, and I'm like, why are you moving your models that way? There's no objectives, there's no models. The fuck are you doing? And I'm like, all right, whatever. And then I'm like, he goes over, and then his turn goes again. He moves, and then he goes, I'm gonna shoot. I'm like, what are you shooting? He goes, shoot your model. And I'm just like, he has no idea it's my dead pal. And I'm sitting there going, all right, have fun. You're not arranging anything else. I'm not saying that, but I'm just like, okay, what do you hit on? Wunda? All right, so I could go. So I take my model that's dead already, and I go, he's going back to the dead. I'm gonna put it back down. And then I'm thinking he's playing around and he's being funny at this point. Next turn comes, he charges them. I'm like, yo, my heart is beating. I'm like, this is the most hilarious experience of my life. He's charging my dead pile. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the game's over. Let me be kind of funny, maybe I'll fold the reality and bring back my dead pile. I'm like, no, I can't be that. I won't do that. So finally the game ends, and all of his buddies come over to him, and I'm just gonna go, hey man, I just gotta tell you, you know how my army's alive right here? He's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's my dead pile. If I didn't have the biggest homer, like, it was the most amazing. So they got shirts made, Team Dead Pile. It was glorious. And so that's a big meme over here. And I had a great time playing, and it was enjoyable. So Team Dead Pile.
My ass off. Oh my god! I think I need to end it here, because I don't think that anything could top Team Dead Pile. Shout out to Team Dead Pile.
There you go. But thanks again for having me. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Kaleb, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I think as well, folks, if you've listened this long, if you haven't, if you're a Zench player, and if you agree with what we've said, disagree with what we've said, as Frisbee's saying, I love you, Kaleb. Definitely probably one of the highlight shows this year. I've had some really good shows this year. You're certainly in my top 5. So much appreciated, much love here. But let me know. Let us know how you're building your Zench army. Are you an Archaon fan? Are you running all the pink still? Have you found some secret list tech in the Flamers, or are you bringing Zangor in? Like, how are you? Is it time to bring back the Enlightened? I don't know. And I think it's the cool thing about AOS 3. AOS 3 is just like this weird meta that's kind of settling, and what we knew about 2E is not necessarily what is in 3E. And then we sit here in Gur, but I don't know if you saw today, they previewed the new Underworlds or Warcry. I think it's Underworlds or Warcry, and it's all very spidery, kind of under a cave. Cool. So it's a very cool video, but the question begs, what's coming next? Are we about to move into Ulgu? Are we about to move into the caves of Shimon? Like, who knows how long we're going to be here, and how does that then change lists, incentives, game structure? And then we're back to square one, kind of like list teching and discussing and, you know, unpacking the army. So I indeed love you, Kaleb, and, you know, Deadpile 2022. If you make a shirt, I feel like I need at least a sticker.
No, I got you. No, it's good. I appreciate this.
All right, well, mate, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go make myself a coffee. Thank you very much, Kaleb. If you enjoyed the show, like, subscribe, hashtag best video ever. Changer of ways. Enjoy the rest of your night or day in the Crystal Palace or the Labyrinth. Actually, you're a labyrinth. You're the Crystal Labyrinth. It's Slaanesh that has the palace.
There you go. 9 ways to die. Here we go. Have a good one.
See you, folks. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.